Chapter 776. The military had always been swift in their execution. The moment he finished his sentence, someone pressed down on Wu Zhen's hand. Wu Zhen had never been treated in such a manner. In the past, she had been the one arresting others. Who could arrest her? She was the sole heir of the Wu family. Do you know who I am? How dare you send me to the military court? Wu Zhen narrowed her eyes, her voice turning cold. I'm here to investigate a case. Since when did the military have the right to arrest a police officer? If you aren't clear about your duties, call your regiment commander. You won't be able to bear the consequences of offending someone you can't afford to offend. The soldier swept her a glance, his tone indifferent. Miss Wu, you don't have to worry. What consequences can there be for me to carry out my duties? Instead, after being fired, you refused to hand over your badge and obstructed the military's mission. You even found a bunch of people to make me answer the phone. As a businessman, when can the Wu family command the military? Or does Miss Wu think it's fine for you to abuse your power with your family's power? Wu Zhen lifted her lids. You're from the crime squad? Did Director Huang ask you to come? She hadn't thought about Qin Mo. Because Wu Zhen felt that she had done it without anyone knowing. Unless it was someone from the crime squad who had been trying to push her out, that was why they came up with such an excuse. She knew Fatty Huang didn't like her. Her grandfather had said that if Fatty Huang made her leave the crime squad, he would definitely find a chance to get revenge for her. Hence, Fatty Huang bore a grudge against her. Wu Zhen narrowed her eyes, scoffing coldly. I'm just here to investigate something. It has nothing to do with the crime squad. What right do you have to control me? The soldier watched her, wondering how she managed to get into the police academy. She was an insult to the profession. There's no need for the crime squad to control someone like you. Miss Wu, you've been pampered for too long. Have you forgotten that as an ordinary citizen, there's nothing you can and can't do? You've already been fired, yet you're still pretending to be a police officer. Miss Wu, do you think the Wu family will be able to bail you out? Don't worry, it won't happen again. Take her away. Wu Zhen clenched her fists at the last word. She wasn't done with the crime squad. Wu Zhen was brought to the military vehicle and Su Mei couldn't escape. Those who stayed behind continued to look through the files. All of a sudden, only the sound of paper flipping could be heard. Piles and piles of files were carried in and carried away. There were very few people who knew about this. One of the characteristics of the military was secrecy. The director of the hospital was not stupid. Of course, he would not do such a thing. What's more, he had heard enough. The people who came to find him at the beginning were no longer from the police. From the looks of it, he was making things convenient for someone who shouldn't be making things convenient, so he didn't dare to say anything else. With a bunch of soldiers standing in front of him, his legs went soft. But what exactly were these people investigating? He couldn't figure it out no matter how he thought about it. The night deepened. Qin family main family. The armed policemen were still standing outside. From the inside of the house, he could even see the sentries standing guard. There are so many armed policemen stationed here. Why aren't they giving people a chance to kidnap them? Bo Jiu placed one hand in her pocket, tossing the apple core into the bin as she muttered to herself. Madame Zhang thought Bo Jiu was looking at something. She tilted her head and glanced over. Then she smiled. Young Master Jiu, do you think the courtyard is too quiet at night? That's right. Bo Jiu lifted her lips, calm and composed. She didn't reveal her intention to kidnap them at all. Madame Zhang held a plate of freshly cut oranges in her hands. She must have seen Bo Jiu munching on the apple and couldn't help cutting a plate of oranges. She knew young Master Jiu had a big appetite. I think it's too quiet too. Fortunately, young Master Jiu is here. Madame Zhang couldn't help but smile as she spoke. Madame is rarely at home and boss is always in the army. Young Master usually eats alone, so there aren't many lively times at home. But it's different now that young Master Jiu is here. Young Master's appetite is obviously much bigger than before, and he even smiles occasionally. Even though young Master doesn't say it, as a servant, I know that young Master likes young Master Joe's presence. Even Madam is very grateful to young Master Joe for accompanying young Master. After all, young Master's personality is indeed difficult to get along with, so I hope that young Master Joe can be more forgiving in the future. Bo Jiu took the oranges from Madame Zhang's hands and smiled lightly. Madam, don't worry. I'm the kind of person who knows what I'm doing. I know how Brother Mo treats me. Similarly, how important that person was to her. She knew it clearly. There were many things. She didn't want to scheme anymore, and she didn't want to be on guard anymore. If it had been someone else, she would have made sure nothing would go wrong. But that was Qin Mo. That was the Qin Mo who had accompanied her for 3 years and 2 months when she was young. That was the Qin Mo who wanted her to kidnap him and leave without a care for anything else. That wasn't someone else. Bo Jiu fiddled with one of the oranges. If she was destined to live in darkness for the rest of her life, she hoped that the lamp named Qin Mo couldn't be extinguished, even if they became enemies one day. He was also the most important person to her, and the person she couldn't bear to drag into the darkness to accompany her. Madame Zhang watched the gentle smile on the youngster's face and heaved a sigh of relief. After all, young Master hadn't seemed happy when he had returned yesterday. I'll have to trouble young Master Joe to take care of young Master today. Honestly, I was shocked when young Master Joe appeared in the morning. Speaking of which, young Master Joe, how exactly did you come in? I clearly remember that I locked all the doors. Bo Jiu touched the bridge of her nose. In order to maintain Madame Zhang's impression of her as an understanding person, she didn't want to tell her about climbing the wall. Bo Jiu changed to a more tactful way of saying, the back door wasn't locked. You must have forgotten, back door? Madame Zhang was still trying to recall. Bo Jiu had already carried the oranges upstairs. Hey, wait, young Master Jiu, where's the back door? Of course, Bo Jiu wouldn't turn back. How was she going to explain? Besides, she had been plotting to kidnap the Almighty just a moment ago. If Madame Zhang found out about her thoughts, she would never dare to trouble her young master again. Bo Jiu didn't have free hands. She lifted her legs and bent her knees to push the door open. Qin Mo heard the commotion outside. He glanced up, replying leisurely, "What is it?" The wall-jumping scholar can't take it anymore and is about to be exposed. Bo Jiu thought to herself, what's the big deal about being a wall-jumping scholar? She placed the oranges down elegantly and reached for the 2 laptops. I won't be exposed for now. As long as there aren't any cameras outside, I'll be safe. Qin Mo watched the youngster, his lips lifting. Bo Jiu felt that his expression wasn't right. She paused. So, there are cameras? The Almighty's reply was to take the remote control and press the power button with a smile on his face. The internet-connected television was switched on. Bo Jiu couldn't possibly not recognize the figure on the screen. It was obviously herself. But the cameras were well hidden. She had intentionally avoided the cameras outside. She hadn't expected there to be another one. She didn't need to guess to know who it was. As compared to the school's wall, the height of my room isn't much to you. When the Almighty spoke, he never forgot to bring up some dirt on her. Bo Jiu was already used to it. She sat there with the Almighty and admired her dashing figure. She had wanted to confirm the position of the last camera. Qin Mo was watching too. Compared to Bo Jiu, he was more focused on the moment the youngster reached out her right hand to grab onto the wall. Her fair waist was exposed. It's pretty. Bo Jiu assumed the Almighty was referring to her skills. She didn't think much about it. Since it was a dark history, she wanted to delete it. The Almighty was 1 step ahead of her and pressed save. His action was very casual. Bo Jiu couldn't understand why the Almighty would keep the video of her climbing the wall. It seemed like he was collecting her dark history. For instance, the next time he called her a scholar. The Almighty had allowed her to watch the video. However, Bojio was still too naive. The reason why Chin Mo kept the video wasn't just to leave dark history behind. More importantly, there was a particular scene that made him feel, the moment his eyes sank, Chin Mo's throat moved slightly. In the end, it took a lot of patience. Only then did he suppress the rising thoughts, including the dashing movements. He just wanted to press the youngster onto the ground, pull up the irksome uniform, open the back of the t-shirt, and bite her fair waist and back. He wanted to see her trembling, struggling, unable to support herself, crying and begging for mercy. Chin Mo didn't forget that he was pretending to be a patient. He gulped down a mouthful of water and turned off the video. His handsome side profile didn't reveal any of his thoughts. Tomorrow was the first match of the National League. Bojio grabbed both laptops, wanting to use this chance to perfect her adjustments. Brother Mo, let's play. Pass the game? Chin Mo arched a brow. Bojio smiled. PK, the Almighty had always been an opponent that people wanted to challenge. Be it in the game or in real life. Chin Mo swept the excited youngster a glance. I'm not playing. Why? Based on the way the Almighty had added her in the past, he didn't seem like someone who didn't want to win. Chin Mo watched her, his tone calm. Because I won't PK with someone I like. Bojio hadn't expected such an answer. She stilled. She moved the laptop away. Next, she carried Princess up and rubbed him into a ball. It wasn't easy to reply to the Almighty's words. Princess really wanted to bite him. *CK, he wasn't a plush toy, he would have a temper if he rubbed him like that. Chin Mo watched her actions, his lips curved upwards. He placed the laptop aside. Come over, take his temperature. Didn't I just take it? Bojio finally let go of Princess. Giving a male cat a pigtail was an insult to its bloodline. Princess was furious. He walked a few steps forward valiantly. When he realized his reflection in the mirror wasn't bad, he stopped clawing at Bojio. Chin Mo glanced at his stupid cat before returning his gaze to Bojio's face. It's fine if you don't take my temperature. Go get a towel, my body temperature seems to be rising. Bojio immediately reached out to touch Chin Mo's forehead. It wasn't hot. But even if it wasn't hot, she had to take good care of him. Her pet had always been weak and sickly since young. She pulled open his collar and placed the thermometer inside. Bojio took a closer look and realized his face hadn't recovered. His lips were still pale. Almighty Chin had put in a lot of effort to make himself look weak. One of them was the art of expressing one's emotions. He looked at the person in front of him, so clean that he could almost see the layers of fur. Her posture was one that he was satisfied with. He couldn't help smiling. When Bojio saw the smile, she was reminded of Madame Zhang's words. She suddenly had the urge to confess everything. But Bojio knew better than anyone else. The issue between them had never been a matter of gender. One of them was in the light while the other was in the dark. He had his own rules. She had her own protection. Just looking at the Almighty, Bojio would always be reminded of the time when she wanted to buy him. Even though she knew she couldn't have him, she still wanted him. But Bojio understood. She couldn't touch someone like the Almighty so easily. Of course, she couldn't bear to touch him. She wouldn't let go of anyone who touched him. In reality, Bojio didn't just nibble on an apple when she went downstairs. More importantly, he was communicating with Lawyer Bai. As a lawyer, regardless of how young he was, he would always have his own way of hearing things from the past. Including the Almighty's hand injury. Lawyer Bai was indeed reliable. In less than a minute, he replied, "You have to pay more for the Chin family's matter." Sure. As long as she could find out what exactly happened. The international serial murder case. Lawyer Bai's message was short but every word was useful. All the information has been sealed. If you want to find out more, you will have to hack into the crime squad system. Everything about Chin Mo isn't ordinary, especially his past. I advise you not to investigate him casually. It's hard to say how deep his waters are. Bo Jiu chuckled. My waters are deep too. I'll send you the money when I get home and give you preferential terms. Lawyer Bai, are you going to dismiss me with just one sentence? MMH? Lawyer Bai's tone didn't change. Special forces, that's all I know. From a lawyer's perspective, the case wasn't handled perfectly because Chin Mo misunderstood someone. But no one knows why he jumped into the water to save a criminal. This is an international case and it's hard to investigate the cause of his injury. You can only rely on analysis. But there is one thing, ever since that day, he hasn't been involved in the crime squad, he has been playing esports and managing the Chin group. Lawyer Bai's tone didn't change at all. Lawyer Bai's tone didn't change. This meant that the case was a knot in the Almighty's heart. As long as she knew the details of the case, she would be able to find out why the Almighty's hand was injured. Bo Jiu lowered her lids, still looking like the youngster. But there was only one thought in her mind. Chapter 777. The Almighty's call interrupted Bo Jiu's thoughts. But this time, it wasn't news from the special forces. Instead, it was from the crime squad. The words Little Huang flashed on the screen. Bo Jiu glanced at the caller ID, her hand pausing as she wondered who it was. For the Almighty to give her such an adorable nickname. Unexpectedly, the Almighty picked up the call calmly. What's up? The person on the other end of the line replied calmly, something big. Even though it was just 2 words, Bo Jiu could tell who it was. It was obviously Director Huang from the crime squad. Director Huang was equivalent to Little Huang. The Almighty's nickname was unparalleled. But there was one thing, the Almighty didn't seem to mind speaking in front of her. Bo Jiu could vaguely hear the other end of the line. About that woman, we already have an answer. Just like what you said, it's not that simple. There's a dating app that can locate nearby cars. Some drivers will post messages on it. If the girls are willing, they can provide their phone number to the driver, and the driver nearby will call the girl and send her home. But this kind of driver's car is usually registered with the software company, so there shouldn't be any problems. But the girl also confessed that it was because of that time that she contracted AIDS, and once again, Bo Jiu was certain that Almighty Chin had no intention of avoiding her. Because when Director Huang paused, he asked, and what? And we've checked, the car she left her phone number in doesn't seem to be the same car that came to pick her up. Although the driver also drove a BMW, it was clearly recorded on his dashcam that day that he picked up another girl. After sending her home, he also went home, so we ruled out the possibility of that person committing the crime. After the people below told the woman about this, she was in a bad mood. She said she didn't expect that note to be real. Chin Mo's gaze sharpened. What note? There was a note left at the hotel. At first, she didn't pay much attention to it. She thought it was a joke, but now that she thought about it, it was all premeditated. Because there was a line written on the note, guess who's going to be the next one to get sick? Director Huang's voice was clearly softer as he spoke. Because if everything was premeditated, then the nature of this matter would be different. Who do you think will be next? It was obvious that this was a serial case. And if it is such a case, the perpetrator would then become a very unstable propagator. The AIDS in his body was his best killing weapon. Bo Jiu had wanted to display her professionalism and respect the Almighty's privacy. However, the Almighty had no intention of letting her go. He even directly asked about the details of the case. Where did they have sex? Do you have the relevant hotel records? It's useless. The woman said she used her ID card to book the room because the man said he forgot to take the red wine in the car and wanted to get it first. He asked her to send the room number to his phone after she booked the room. That's not going to help. Bo Jiu couldn't help whistling. This whistle was coincidentally heard by the minion. His eyes widened, and his round and bulging body exclaimed, "What's going on?" Qin Mo swept the youngster a glance, replying calmly, "My cat." Director Huang felt that the answer was an insult to his intelligence. Whose cat would whistle? Just as he was about to question him, a cat's meow came from the other side. Bo Jiu pulled Princess over, caressing him. Princess wasn't just meowing, it wasn't just the tip of his hair. Did she think he didn't have a temper by caressing him? Qin Mo still looked sick, but his voice made them clench their teeth. You should have heard it, he isn't peaceful today. Not only did this sentence tarnish his pet's reputation, it also caused Director Huang to swallow all the questions in his mind. She said listlessly, "Then ask your cat why it whistles." Qin Mo replied slowly, "We'll discuss that later." The hotel corridor didn't capture the man's face? No, it's not because he was in disguise, but because there were too many people at the hotel that night. He followed a lot of people into the elevator, and after he got out of the elevator, he kept his head down, so the cameras didn't catch anything. Director Huang clenched his teeth. It was obvious how much of a headache this case was for him. Qin Mo replied faintly, "Got it." He prepared to hang up. Director Huang sighed. "Can't you give me some psychological profiling so that I can arrest him?" "Yes, I'll send it to you later." With that, he hung up and looked at the youngster in front of him. "Tell me, why did you whistle just now?" Bo Jiu smiled faintly. The two of them went to the hotel and the girl paid the bill. The man is either handsome or rich. Oh. Qin Mo arched a brow. What do you mean? Bo Jiu placed her laptop down. For example, handsome men like me and brother Mo, there are many who want to give birth to our babies. If they can sleep with us, they wouldn't care about the money. It was the same logic as if the Almighty was willing to be kidnapped by her but she had to leave a sum of money behind. Compared to the money, the Almighty was more important. Tell me about the second scenario. The youngster leaned against the balcony and sat on it. That posture was very handsome. She lifted the corner of her lips, and the mole under her eyes was very obvious at that moment. The girl thinks that the guy is too rich, so she wants to cast a long line to catch a big fish. That's why she doesn't care about the small things, because she thinks that the guy will give her more than that. Brother Mo, you're a psychology major, so you should be able to guess what I'm saying. Besides, your phone's volume isn't low, and it's impossible for a boyfriend and girlfriend to make an appointment through a dating app. So, the first thing to eliminate is the possibility of an intimate relationship between the two of them. That leaves only handsomeness and money to make the girl pay for a room, but I guess the latter is more likely. Qin Mo glanced up, gesturing for the youngster to continue. Bo Jiu tilted her head, exuding the devilish aura of a playboy. If I was the one getting a room with a girl, I definitely wouldn't think of bringing red wine. This is the style of a rich person, driving a luxurious car with a bottle of good wine. It would be best if the clothes on her body were expensive as well. That way, more people would be hooked since some girls care about such things. I'm guessing that the victim must have a strong sense of pride. Her monthly salary isn't enough, but she would spend 2,000 to 3,000 on cosmetics and 10,000 to 20,000 on luxurious items. She wants to be a phoenix without sewing. These are the most basic thoughts of a person. I can't judge if it's right or wrong, but it's obvious that the culprit is targeting this mentality of the girl. Because these girls aren't guarded against the rich, they would sleep with him on the first day. Bo Jiu had never imagined that one day, she would be sitting together with the Almighty to discuss a case. Furthermore, they would be acting as friends. It was a unique experience and feeling. It was easy to feel a sense of excitement that she had never felt before. But very quickly, the excitement was extinguished by the Almighty's words. What if you were the one getting a room with a girl? Qin Mo tilted his head, his voice cold. I didn't know you had such thoughts. Bo Jiu paused, feeling a little guilty. It was just an analogy. It seems like you aren't good at physics, you should start learning Chinese again. Qin Mo's gaze didn't warm up. Who taught you to make such an analogy? Bo Jiu felt that it was better not to talk about academics. Bo Jiu felt that it was better not to talk about academic matters. She leaned closer to him and smiled. Brother Mo, isn't it about time for your psychological profiling? Since she had taken care of him for the past 2 days, Qin Mo's coldness dissipated. The culprit is between 25 and 35 years old. He isn't very handsome, but he isn't ugly either. He has a certain level of male charm and the smell on his body is very pleasant. He is also very particular about his clothes, clean and rich. He has a certain amount of free time and is extremely hostile towards vain women. He is unmarried. Bo Jiao had only guessed that the culprit was clean and rich. How could the Almighty have guessed so much? The smell on his body is pleasant? How could he have guessed that? It was understandable that he wasn't married, since married men would create a sense of distance. From Bo Jiao's perspective, the culprit was also unmarried. Moreover, he was between 25 and 35 years old and had a certain level of male charm. Bo Jiao had also guessed that he wouldn't be ugly. For instance, if he had a big belly like Director Huang, no matter how rich he was, girls wouldn't be willing to ride in his car or fork out money for him. Hence, the culprit definitely wouldn't look bad. In fact, his facial features were perfect and would be easy to spot. But the smell? Qin Mo lowered his lids to look at the youngster's furrowed brows. The silver hair on the top of his head was fluffy. Qin Mo lifted the corner of his mouth. Seems like the wall-jumping scholar isn't good enough. You didn't learn some knowledge in biology class. When a man and a woman are first attracted to each other, other than appearance, the scent they emit. Otherwise, why would some people take a shower before doing it? MMH? Bo Jiao didn't know how to reply. She pulled Princess over and started to caress him. Who would learn such things in biology class? Besides, other than the Almighty, no one would use such a method to analyze a case. This is going to be a troublesome serial case. It's obvious that the culprit's IQ isn't low. He's thought through everything thoroughly. I'm guessing that the original phone number has become a useless number that no one picks up. Bo Jiao's efforts weren't in vain. Qin Mo sat on the pure white bed, his brows arched. Director Huang didn't mention anything about the phone not being able to reach him. I guessed. Bo Jiao didn't avoid Qin Mo's probing. It's simple. If I were the culprit, I would prepare some tools. Every time I make an appointment with someone, the SIM card for the day would be rendered useless. After changing to the next target, I would use a new number to contact them. Even though the official SIM cards are all registered with real names, there are still ways to get one that doesn't require one's real name. The car plate would probably be tampered with as well, something that can be learned with a little money. Besides, the culprit would only appear on weekends when traffic is heavy. It wouldn't be hard to pass it off as real. Qin Mo fiddled with the lighter, his voice calm. Not a bad theory and concept for the culprit. Such a compliment was enough to make one break out in cold sweat. If it had been anyone else, they would have felt guilty. Bo Jiao knew she couldn't back down at this moment. With the experience from the previous live stream, it is indeed easy to guess. There was a smacking sound. Qin Mo kept the lighter, smiling at the youngster. You are hinting that the culprit isn't a newbie. It's never tiring talking to Brother Mo. Bo Jiao threw herself onto the bed, placing her arms behind her head. She knew the Almighty wasn't suspecting her anymore and could focus on the case. But I can't eliminate the possibility that someone is teaching him to do it. Before she could finish, Qin Mo spoke. He might be sick, but he was still behaving like a rich young master, exuding an aura of abstinence. Bo Jiao chuckled lightly. That was indeed what she wanted to say. It's a dating app, the messages are public but the girls' phone numbers aren't. Of course, it's easy for us hackers to find out, but it isn't easy for an ordinary person. This time, Qin Mo didn't reply. Instead, he reached for his phone and dialed. Once again, Bo Jiao saw the words Little Huang. She wanted to know what Director Huang's thoughts would be after he found out about his nickname. Director Huang couldn't be bothered about that now. When he saw that it was Qin Mo, he was filled with excitement. Is the answer out? Serial murder case. Qin Mo's voice was calm and emotionless. The mastermind is Z, it wasn't just Director Huang. Even Bo Jiu stilled. Z was the mastermind? Bo Jiu arched a brow. That theory, combined the maiden's sacrifice and this case into one. Qin Mo's gaze was heavy. I will send the psychological profile of the culprit to your email. Find the culprit according to the criteria. I don't care how you do it, tell the public not to make casual appointments. Director Huang replied, that's easy to say, but aren't you overthinking this matter? The maiden's sacrifice was initiated through the forums, but this time, it's through an app. I don't think they're the same. Both cases are carried out through the internet and the victims are all female. All of the culprits' information will reveal their psychological activities and they are all related to sleeping. The only difference is the method of sleeping, but the nature is the same. Most importantly, no culprit would leave a note to inform the public that he is the culprit so that the police can find him faster. This is Z's second challenge to the crime squad. Qin Mo's every word seemed to hit the nail on the head. Director Huang's jaw dropped and he scratched his head. He scratched his head again. This is clearly a challenge to you. Our key case investigation unit has been implicated because of you. Don't make a move after you lock onto the target. I will send someone to contact the culprit and find Z. Qin Mo hung up once he was done. He didn't give little Huang a chance to react. Bo Jiu felt that it was time to recommend herself. Brother Mo, what do you think about me contacting him? My hand speed isn't bad. Since it concerned her impersonator, she had to be more proactive. Qin Mo kept his phone, replying lazily, no. All right. In that case, she could only follow the people from the key case investigation unit. She respected her pet's decision. But it wouldn't clash with her methods. Qin Mo tilted his head and glanced at the youngster lying beside him. His tone carried a hint of warning. Behave yourself. If I catch you again, you should know the consequences. Brother Mo, where's the trust between humans? Bo Jiu sighed deeply. It has been a long time since I've messed with the internet. Do you know what it means to a hacker? It's the world of lousy hackers. Even though he knew the youngster wouldn't be telling him the truth. The corners of Qin Mo's lips lifted when he saw the depressed look on her face. Bo Jiu lifted her lips, hopping off the bed to take a shower, but she didn't forget to bring her phone. She closed the bathroom door. The first thing she did was to turn on the noise-canceling shower. Amidst the sound of the shower, the youngster lowered her lids, her long fingers pressing on the screen. Her dark eyes were unprecedentedly bright, the letters turning into strings of words. Follow the crime squad member, hunting operation commencing, Z. She raised her hand and sent the message. Bo Jiu tugged off her uniform. The next thing she heard was the sound of water splashing. It was dark outside the window. But for the esports players, they could only feel it when they played at night. Ding! The sound of an email rang. Watanabe glanced at the person reading a comic on the floor behind him. Vice Captain, your phone is ringing. Hoshino glanced down. When he saw the line of words, he moved his fingers, choosing to delete it. Even the traces were erased. At this moment, he just realized it. Z was really back. He wasn't sure when. It started to rain again. In a remote county hospital, the sound of documents flipping continued, suppressing the sound of the rain. Fortunately, they were all soldiers with good physiques. They weren't afraid of the cold in the archive room. If it had been an ordinary person, they would have been exhausted. The Special Forces soldier was there too. Since it was an order from young master, there couldn't be any mistakes. With him around, he felt that this matter was reliable. But it was undeniable that there were too many documents to check and they could only rely on manual labor. There weren't any shortcuts. Just when he thought they would have to check for another night to find what they were looking for, a voice rang out. Chapter 778. The night sky was accompanied by a light drizzle, each drop sending chills down one's spine. Su Mei and Wu Zhen, who were sitting in the back row, had never suffered like this before. The former claimed to be cultured, but she had always been a mistress and enjoyed the pleasures of a ready-made woman. The latter's background meant that she wouldn't suffer much. Su Mei was still wearing a dress. She hadn't felt cold since she had been in a heated room previously. Now, she was a little irritated from the cold. The garrison in this small place wasn't the same as some of the well-known troops. It was really an insanely poor place. At the thought of how He Honghua had given birth to the little bastard who had been at odds with her, Su Mei felt indignant. Su Mei's heart was filled with unwillingness. Why was a country bumpkin living better than her? She was a highly educated person. Su Mei wasn't the only one who couldn't sit still in such a situation. Even Wu Zhen's expression was extremely ugly. What was the crime squad trying to do? Why did they have to stare at her? She would be able to get her police badge back in a month. With this ruckus, it would definitely be difficult for her to be transferred to the same rank. The most important thing was the secret. Wu Zhen narrowed her eyes, sweeping a glance at Su Mei, who was still throwing a tantrum. What exactly is it that makes you think you can take down that ungrateful gay from the Fu family? Now that things have come to this, can't you give me an answer now? Su Mei looked up and paced back and forth before saying, I always felt that He Honghua had a problem. At that time, she was still a shareholder of the Fu Corporation and had the right to enjoy a good environment for childbirth, but she just disappeared for 3 months and chose to give birth in a small county town. I was also pregnant at that time, only 5 months later than He Honghua, but in such a short time, she came back with a boy. If it weren't for that little country bumpkin, Fu Zhongyi would have left all his belongings to my son. It was all because Fu Zhongyi was blinded by his son and I was pregnant, so I couldn't give him any advice, so he gave me the cold shoulder at that time. Fortunately, that little country bumpkin didn't live up to his expectations, otherwise, I really wouldn't know how to get his attention back. At that time, I wanted to get someone to investigate, but later on, I hired a private detective. He said that when He Honghua gave birth, she found a friend of hers to help her deliver the baby in the county hospital. They even did some confidential work, but I couldn't find out who that friend was, but according to the nurse who accompanied her during the delivery, He Honghua. Su Mei looked up and paced back and forth before saying, I already felt that there was something wrong with He Honghua. At that time, she was still a shareholder of the Fu Corporation and had the right to enjoy a very good environment for childbirth, but she just disappeared for 3 months and chose to give birth in a small county town. Su Mei paused. It wasn't a boy, it was a girl. Upon hearing that, Wu Zhen suddenly lifted her lids, her pupils dilating. A girl? Are you sure? It was because the nurse wasn't sure. She said she vaguely remembered it was a girl, but later said she remembered wrongly. It should be a boy. Su Mei clenched her fists. That's why I wanted Miss Wu to come with me to look for He Honghua's birth information. She was just from a village, so she definitely didn't have the ability to falsify the information. Even if we could settle it with some money, the hospital's records are sealed and ordinary people wouldn't be able to see them. If Miss Wu didn't have the authority to investigate, this matter would be difficult. But now, it's all because of those stupid soldiers. Wu Zhen's expression changed. If He Honghua really had a girl, why did she raise him as a boy? Miss Wu probably doesn't understand. Miss Wu, you probably don't understand. If she didn't do that, she would have died of poverty. Fu Zhongyi is a nouveau riche after all. That's how the villagers think. The eldest son is the most important. Once they have a son, they won't think about getting a divorce. If Miss Wu saw how happy Fu Zhongyi was at that time, you would understand why He Honghua did that. If it were me, I would have done the same. Su Mei sneered. He Honghua, that country bumpkin, usually pretends to be careless and doesn't speak according to the situation, but I didn't expect her to be so scheming. She has been trapping me for almost 18 years. Once that little bumpkin comes of age, the entire Fu Corporation will be taken over by them. I was about to succeed, but who knew that the little bumpkin had secretly bought so many shares of the company? Now, not only has my brother been removed from the board of directors, even I can't go to the company, leaving only old Fu to deal with Yihonghua and those stubborn old fogies who have no idea what's going on in their minds. They insist that they shouldn't do anything dishonorable for the sake of the kindness they have shown in the past. What's the point of being a company owner? It's fine as long as they can maximize their profits. I've already ground down those people who don't know what's good for them, but that little bumpkin just had to show up. I really didn't expect that he would come back from the ashes. Now, this is the only way to bring that little bumpkin down. If he's really a girl, he'll definitely be eliminated from the national contest because of his fake identity. At that time, not only will he not have a share in the company, but his fans will also join forces to scold him. After all, ever since that little bumpkin came out, there has been a lot of bad news about him. Wu Jun understood everything Su Mei said. And if the gay was really a girl, Brother Mo wouldn't treat him the way he did now. At the end of the day, the gay could be so arrogant and stay by Brother Mo's side because he was a guy. Brother Mo wouldn't have his guard up against him. But at the same time, Brother Mo hated women's deceit, especially this person who used such a disguise to get close to him. The outcome was obvious. Wu Jun couldn't wait to tell Qin Mo about it. Su Mei was still vexed. If only we had arrived a day earlier, we would have gotten the files. So what if we didn't get it? Wu Jun's eyes dimmed. You should have told me earlier. That way, she would have had something to talk to Brother Mo about. Moreover, from the looks of it, Wu Jun felt that there was a 50% chance that the gay was a girl. But she didn't know what kind of girl was so hateful. Especially her craftiness. And her usual behavior. She couldn't think of anything like that. However, there was one thing, even if there was none. She could create something for him. Su Mei knew that Wu Jun wasn't happy. She didn't want to offend her, so she said gently, I really didn't know anyone would dare to go against the Wu family, so, go against the Wu family? Wu Jun interrupted her with a smile. Just based on these people. Madam Su, you must have heard of my grandfather's connections. Just wait, I spoke to my grandfather long before we were sent here. He will think of a way to get you out with me. We will be back in Jiang City by tomorrow morning, just in time for the National League. When the time comes, she would tell Brother Mo. That gay's fate had come to an end. Su Mei heard Wu Jun's words, her discomfort disappearing completely. Miss Wu is really thoughtful. As long as the Wu family's connections were there, what was there to be afraid of? At the same time, the soldier handed over the files he found to the Special Forces soldier. The Special Forces soldier remembered Qin Mo's instructions. After sending the files, he had to seal it immediately. He couldn't let anyone see the details of the files, including himself. Everyone retreat. The Special Forces soldier held on to the files, giving the order in a low voice. The soldiers had always been swift in their actions. When they came, they didn't leave any precautions. When they retreated, they didn't leave any clues. In the end, only the Special Forces soldier was left in the Hummer. He dialed the number he had called the most that day. Speak. One word was enough to let him know that at least it was convenient for his young master to call. I found the things, I'll rush back now. I'll reach the city in about an hour. The Special Forces soldier started the car, asking in a low voice, where should I wait for young master? Qin Mo glanced out of the window. Come to the military courtyard, I'll take it personally. The Special Forces soldier paused. Head to the main house? Ever since that operation, he hadn't seen his young master again. After all, it had been a long time since his young master had been out. Qin Mo's gaze deepened. Something happened in Jiang City, gather the brothers and get to work. The Special Forces soldier's eyes lit up. Young master, what do you mean? F***CK. I've been waiting for this day for too long. Cut the crap, come first, I have a mission for you. With that, Qin Mo hung up. It could be said that it was a phone call. He seemed to be calculating the time. For instance, the youngster who was showering should be out soon. Bo Jiu was indeed out, drying her hair with one hand and rubbing her eyes with the other. Brother Mo, you should change your shampoo to something milder. Chin Mo glanced at the youngster with messy hair. He placed his phone at the side and pulled her forward, narrowing his eyes. You didn't bring your eye drops? Who would bring that kind of thing to climb over the wall? Was he looking for a burden? Chin Mo couldn't care less about pretending to be sick. He stood up from the bed and said, "Wait here." "All right." The white towel hung down, covering half of the youngster's face. The faint smile on his face indicated that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Sure enough, after Chin Mo left, Hun Mian's expression changed. Bo Jiao glanced towards the phone on the bedside table. She wanted to unlock it. Her hands were itching. It was because of little Huang's phone call. It was obvious that before this, the Almighty hadn't contacted the crime squad. That was the problem. If he wasn't from the crime squad, who exactly had the charm to make the Almighty send her messages and occasionally pick up her phone? She didn't bring her tools. But with her knowledge of the keyboard, it wasn't impossible. It wasn't impossible to get the password. As a qualified international hacker, she still had the basic professional ethics. For instance, she used the materials she could find. Bo Jiao took out the transparent tape she had taken from the bottom and stuck it vertically on the phone screen. Then she stretched it. The fine sweat on his fingertips would definitely leave traces on the phone screen if he were to unlock it often. Even a clean person like the Almighty couldn't prevent his body temperature from rising. To a normal person, even if they took the items out, they wouldn't be able to tell anything. But Bo Jiao wasn't a normal person. She was more sensitive to the numbers on the screen. She was more sensitive than anyone else. The white towel was still on top of her silver head. Her beautiful eyes narrowed as she identified the numbers one by one. Then, she pressed the button. 520999. The moment the phone screen lit up, the youngster paused. The youth paused, the tips of his ears turning red. The password. She didn't have time to think about anything else. Bo Jiao glanced at the call history. As the young lord of the hacker world, Bo Jiao would always have skills that normal hackers wouldn't train. Mental arithmetic, memory, and sensitivity to numbers. These were things she had learned since she was young. With a glance, even if she couldn't remember everything, she could still remember the general idea. She wanted to find something. But it was obvious that with the Almighty's style, he wouldn't leave any clues on his phone. There was only a string of numbers. Who exactly was he? The moment the thought entered her mind, her left ear twitched. There were approaching footsteps. Bo Jiao slid her fingers, returning the phone screen to the main page. She pressed the white towel on her head with the other hand, sitting on the bed in a carefree manner. Chin Mo walked in, glancing at the youngster. He reached out and pinched her chin, ordering calmly, "Raise your head." Bo Jiao was obedient since she had just done something bad. She raised her head carefully, smiling at the Almighty, the type that thought she was handsome. But the Almighty didn't know what was good for him. His beautiful brows arched. "What did you do? Why are you trying to please me?" "Bo Jiao, it seems like you really did something." Chin Mo watched her reaction, sweeping a glance towards the bedside table. "The position of the phone, it wasn't like this when I went out. It seems like wall-climbing students like to go through other people's things. In that case, you should know the password, 5209. When Bo Jiao heard the password, she coughed instinctively, feeling as though she was choking. Chin Mo continued to pinch the youngster's chin, tilting it upwards. He was nonchalant, his handsome face inching closer, his breath hitting her face. "Honestly, are you trying to decipher all the password-protected items in the room because you want to hear my confession?" Bo Jiao. The Almighty's ability to backstab her. "I clearly returned it," Bo Jiao muttered. She really couldn't tell which part of the phone had moved. MMH. Chin Mo turned, his fair fingers pointing. "It's about a centimeter away." Bo Jiao. "That little distance. You wall-climbing students won't be able to tell." Qin Mo didn't forget to attack her. After all, it's the difference in distance, and to a certain extent, it has to do with physics. Bo Jiao was completely listless. Qin Mo was still sizing the youngster up, chatting casually. How did you decipher the password? Bo Jiao had lost all hope in life. When the eye drops landed on her eyeballs, she felt a stinging pain. She raised her hand and pointed at the tools in the bin. Don't blink. Qin Mo fixed the youngster's face, not forgetting to sweep a glance over. Tape. That's a smart idea. There are deep and light marks on the phone screen, perfect for deciphering the password. Did you cheat Madame Zhang? If Madame Zhang finds out about your persona, she won't be able to eat you tomorrow. One of Bo Jiao's eyes was shut, leaving the other one. Her cheeks were puffed up, looking like a pretty youngster. My handsome persona is enough, everything else is meaningless. I didn't lie to Madame Zhang, I stole it. Qin Mo chuckled. Does stealing give you a sense of accomplishment? No. Bo Jiao touched her pocket, reaching out to place a crumpled 10 yuan in Qin Mo's hand. I'll buy it at the original price. Qin Mo arched a brow. It's only 10 yuan, it's not even enough to buy a candy. She shouldn't be discussing the common people's money values with the Almighty. 10 yuan was enough to buy a few lollipops. The last drop of eye drops fell into her eye socket. Her vision was plunged into darkness. All that was left was the man's pleasant voice. Don't open your eyes, close them for a while, I'm going to shower. Bo Jiao was lying on her side. Princess had wanted to sneak an attack on her since he wouldn't be able to live up to his name if he didn't take revenge for being needed. Who knew that the moment she walked into the room, the youngster would scoop her up and carry her in his arms. Meow. This youngster was so cruel, how did Master tolerate him? Princess's body was soft, furry and soft. Moreover, there was eye drops in her eyes. The tip of her nose was filled with a familiar scent. MMH. The Almighty's scent. The Almighty didn't seem to care that she was peeking at his privacy. Her puppy was still so nice to her. The youngster's silver hair fell from her ears, covering her beautiful eyes. Even the hand that was hugging Princess had unknowingly loosened its grip, lowering slowly. His breathing became calm. When Qin Mo walked out while drying his hair, this was the scene he saw. His deep gaze dimmed. He walked over, reaching out to caress the face that had sunk into the pillow. The phone screen beside him lit up. Qin Mo stood up, glancing at the caller ID. He walked out of the room before picking up the call. Young master, I'm here. With that, the Special Forces soldier turned the Hummer's headlights into double flashes. Qin Mo glanced up. Don't make any noise, I'm going out. The Special Forces soldier was confused. Why was young master so cautious even in the same family? Besides, didn't young master dislike the rain? Why did he come out? Just as he was thinking about this, Qin Mo walked out in his pajamas. Qin Mo walked out in his pajamas. The pure white cotton home clothes matched with the black umbrella in his hand. There was also the 4 patch on the back of his hand. The Special Forces soldier was stunned by his boss's getup. What was young master doing? Was he pretending to be a sick rich young master? Qin Mo didn't waste his breath, pulling the car door open and entering. File. The Special Forces soldier handed the file over. It's sealed, no one has seen it before. Qin Mo took it. He didn't say a word, his long slender fingers flicking through the file. It was a detailed report of the pregnant woman, her name and age included. It was obviously He Honghua when she was young. Qin Mo's indifferent gaze swept downwards. Suddenly, that pair of eyes, which had always been calm, actually shook violently. Chapter 779. Under the dim light of the phone. A corner of the file was revealed. On the left was the name and on the right was the gender. It was an ordinary birth file. But the word woman which wasn't very big, was reflected in Qin Mo's eyes. It stirred up the water in his eyes. That fella who didn't know what to do with himself. That fella who liked to brag about his handsomeness. That fella who fought more fiercely than a man. That fella who wanted to compare size with him the first time they met. That fella who didn't know what was good for her and always swayed in front of him, making him gay. Was it a female? There was a loud boom. Thunder rumbled in the sky. The car window reflected Qin Mo's chiseled and handsome face. He had thick eyebrows and a high nose bridge. At this moment, even his mixed facial features couldn't hide the shock he was feeling. No, he wasn't really shocked. It would be more accurate to say that he didn't know how to describe his expression. His first reaction was to flip the file over and raise it up, looking at the Special Forces soldier. The Special Forces soldier had never seen his young master like this. In his impression, the young master was always at ease, like a god walking in the flames of hell. No matter how the surrounding environment changed, the young master was still the same. But this time, there was an obvious change in his young master's emotions. And it was a huge change. Is there a problem with the file? This was the only possibility that the Special Forces soldier could think of. Qin Mo's deep eyes dimmed, the impact coming from the depths of his chest made him clench his fists. No, there's no problem. It was obvious that his young master had adjusted his emotions. But what exactly was this file for his young master to be like this? The Special Forces soldier couldn't help but be curious, stretching his neck to take a look. Qin Mo pulled the file down, his side profile elegant, his gaze indifferent, but there was an innate sense of oppression. The Special Forces soldier froze, retracting his neck immediately. He was afraid that his young master would break it if he was unhappy. Apart from me, who else has seen this file? Qin Mo's low voice mixed with the dripping rain, giving off a different feeling. The Special Forces soldier sat up straight. Sir, according to the requirements of the mission, it's all confidential. Other than young master, no one else has seen it. Qin Mo was obviously distracted, but he tried his best to maintain his basic thinking. His long fingers slid over a word in the document, and his gaze deepened. Pass down the order. Don't let anyone know that someone investigated He Honghua's birth details. Go and make a new file according to the hospital specifications and put it back. Make another one and put it back. The Special Forces soldier turned the steering wheel. But I haven't seen the one in young master's hand, and I don't know what's in it. Qin Mo lifted his lids, replying slowly, do I have to teach you how to forge now? Hey. The Special Forces soldier chuckled. I know how to fake it. The main thing is what effect young master wants to achieve. Qin Mo folded the document, his voice calm. There's no need for any effects, just fill in the gender column as male. So simple. The Special Forces soldier was dumbfounded. What kind of forgery was this? The young master came down personally just to instruct him on such a trivial matter? The famous Special Forces soldier felt like he was just a logistician. Chapter 780. The soldier's eyes lit up when he heard the last part. He was finally energized. It seems like you're really going to make a comeback. Qin Mo didn't speak. His eyes were still on the paper in his hands as though he was confirming something. The soldier wanted to say something but Qin Mo had already pushed the car door open and walked out. He held a pure black umbrella over his head and the rain poured down. No one could see Qin Mo's expression under the umbrella. The paper crumpled in his palm bit by bit. Under his black hair were eyes as deep as the sea. Until now, the unusual throbbing in his chest hadn't calmed down. Even his breathing was filled with white air. Madame Zhang saw her young master standing outside. She hurriedly put on her jacket and wanted to rush out. But before she could move, Qin Mo had already walked in. Qin Mo had already walked in, the closed umbrella dripping with water. Whether it was his shoulders or his black hair, there were still traces of moisture. At first, Madame Zhang thought it was because of the rain. That was why young master was in a bad mood. But after a closer look, she didn't see anything bad. Because she could vaguely see the corners of his lips lifting. There was an indescribable ruthlessness and playfulness. He looked as though he was going to teach someone a lesson. But he wasn't really angry. Instead, he chuckled. When his black hair fell down, he looked unusually handsome. Madame Zhang was confused. Why was she getting more and more confused about young master's thoughts? Was there something good? Or was there something bad? Qin Mo didn't go upstairs immediately. Instead, he took the lighter from the coffee table. He tilted his head and lit a cigarette. The feeling of abstinence grew stronger as the smoke lingered. But after he lit the cigarette, he didn't smoke it. Instead, he pressed the burning long and thin cigarette against the file. Qin Mo was different from any other time. The aura of a warlord's young master was revealed. There were armed soldiers stationed in the courtyard. Qin Mo's home attire didn't seem out of place at all. His indifference didn't hide his dominance. Perhaps only the Qin family could do this. In the flames, before the cigarette was finished, the file had already burned to ashes. Madame Zhang watched from the side without saying a word. In such a family, everyone knew that the burning of some letters couldn't be questioned. Qin Mo held the cigarette with one hand. His posture was indescribably elegant. But his thoughts weren't elegant at all. He should have taken that guy long ago. He reached out and put out the cigarette in the ashtray. Qin Mo stood up and walked upstairs. He walked very slowly. But with every step he took, his eyes would darken a little. Until the youth's sleeping face appeared in his line of sight, some emotions erupted like a volcano in his eyes. Deep in her dreams, she hadn't realized the situation she was in. If she had known, she wouldn't have been able to sleep so peacefully. She thought that it would be fine as long as she tightened her breasts and got ready for anything. Unfortunately, a fatal secret had already been stolen by Qin Mo unknowingly. Good eye drops had a certain sleep-inducing effect, which was to allow the patient's eyes to get sufficient rest. This point was also outside of the incident. But because of this, Bojiu was in a deeper sleep than usual. Qin Mo looked down at the youngster sleeping on his bed, his silver hair contrasting with his fair and clean face. Chapter 781. Gradually, his gaze darkened and even his breathing changed. The usually elegant Qin Mo started to feel thirsty. Qin Mo threw the lighter to the other side of the bed. It seemed to be the start of something. The evil fire in his body surged towards Qin Mo, almost engulfing him. He wanted a more intense kiss, wanted to get closer and even wanted to tear the person in front of him into pieces. Qin Mo could clearly feel the agitation in his blood, the heat coming from all directions, finally gathering at a point between his legs. Qin Mo walked towards the youngster, reaching out to tug his collar open, as though he couldn't suppress the desire anymore. His fingers caressed her waist and moved upwards. He was probably making a final confirmation. To confirm if she was really a girl. His fingers obviously touched the restraint. Qin Mo's gaze sharpened. He pulled out the cloth and sighed. Bojiu rubbed her head against the pillow, her voice cold and slightly hoarse. It floated in the air, causing the atmosphere to become extremely ambiguous and bewildering. Qin Mo looked at the person in his arms. His eyes, which were as dark as ink, were tainted with a deep darkness. How could he have believed that this was a fake back then? His fingers moved upwards with that strength. It was very light, so light that it couldn't wake the person in deep sleep, but it carried an electric sensation. Qin Mo felt the indescribable smoothness of his fingertips, his breath getting hotter, inch by inch hitting the ear with the black diamond. His eyes watched the youngster's face. He couldn't help but kiss the smooth spot through the pajamas. The youngster's behavior was easy to lose control. Her pajamas were rolled up from the bottom to the top, revealing a pair of semicircles vaguely visible above her tight and fair abdomen. Qin Mo's gaze darkened, his fingers digging in. A certain spot was frighteningly hot. It was impossible for a person in deep sleep to not feel anything. But his eyelids were very heavy. Bojio felt her entire body go soft, but she couldn't tell what was different. When the numbing current rose from her tailbone, she couldn't help but frown. But her body was indeed honest. A girl at this age was like a budding flower, waiting to be plucked. Hence, every part of her body was very sensitive. Bojio moved her legs uncontrollably. She wasn't sure what she was rubbing. But this action was undoubtedly seduction in Chin Mo's eyes. You want it? It was a low word, because he knew the person in his arms wouldn't wake up. That feeling made him want to ignore everything else and just have her. But, compared to a certain someone who was half asleep, he preferred to see someone voluntarily sit on his waist. Especially when she begged him with her raspy voice, saying that she couldn't take it anymore. Chin Mo's throat tightened. His fingers slid downwards, locking onto her thighs. Through the not-so-thick pajama pants, the youngster who wanted to rub against him felt his scalding heat. Just like that, he rubbed against her inch by inch. He didn't know how long it had been before he pulled away and entered the bathroom with a dark look in his eyes. This time, he didn't even remove his pajamas. The cold water splashed on his head, but no matter how hard he tried, it couldn't extinguish the swelling because of a certain someone. He couldn't recall the scene he had seen just now. That annoying look of hers, her pajamas rolled up from her waist, revealing her fair skin, messy hair, slightly opened lips, and furrowed brows. That expression only made him want to destroy her even more. The only flaw was that her eyes were closed. If she were to open her eyes, she would be looking at how hard he was going to take her. Her eyes, which had always been clear and distinct, would definitely widen and be filled with seductive tears. Chin Mo raised his head, his slender neck stretched, like the wildest and most beautiful beast. He recalled the expression the youngster had when she had helped him, his hands moving faster. The water from the shower flowed down, outlining the perfect lines of the man's back. Every part of him was filled with strength. Just like that, Chin Mo leaned against the bathroom wall, allowing the water to diffuse into the air. He waited for the water to heat up. When the water turned hot, his entire body was already drenched. He reached out to press the hair on his forehead that had fallen along with the water. His eyes were deep and captivating. There was a type of person who could exude a fatal sexiness when they were so handsome that they were self-deprecating. Without a doubt, Chin Mo was that type of person. But the heat took too long to subside. When he came out again, it was already half an hour later. He walked towards the youngster again. He reached out and restored everything to its original state, including the youngster's pajamas and buttons. Chin Mo's restoration ability was stronger than anyone else's. It could almost be said to be exactly the same. Poor Bojio. She didn't know that for a whole 20 minutes, Chin Mo had been trying the dessert in front of him. Which meant that Chin Mo didn't intend to expose this secret. Not only did he not expose it, all the decisions he made were to help the youngster continue to keep this a secret. He had made up his mind to turn gay. Who would have thought that the person who turned him gay was a woman? Since a certain someone liked to play hide and seek with him. Then he would play with her properly. But this time, his trump card was in his hands. Chin Mo lifted the corners of his lips, full of evil intentions. Bojio didn't know that so much had happened after hugging Princess to sleep. She even flipped over. Chin Mo arched a brow, as though he had thought of something. He took out his phone and took a photo of the sleeping youngster. In the end, he felt that it wasn't a good photo. Because the collarbone was exposed. He reached out and covered the blanket. Next, he lay on it, raised his phone high, and pressed the photo button. After the photo was taken, he logged into his official Weibo and posted a few words. Such a dessert, I really want to eat it all. In an instant, there was an uproar. Almighty Chin actually sent a message in the middle of the night. This isn't normal. *CK, this sleeping photo, I'm drooling. It's so gay. No, I remember that the tour for the National League hasn't started yet. Why is Almighty Chin and Little Spade in the same room? The person above is so stupid, the Almighty sent this photo to say that even if he isn't participating in the competition, he can still sleep with Big Spade. This is daily life. A daily public display of affection. Declaring sovereignty. Their relationship is so good in private. Am I the only one who cares what the dessert is? There isn't any dessert in this photo. Chapter 782. It was the middle of the night. It wasn't just the fans, even the esports media were woken up by this post. The price of waking up the media meant a lot of accumulated public relations work. Feng Yi had originally wanted to sleep early for a day. After all, the National League was tomorrow. As a manager who had followed Qin Mo, it would be a lie if he said he wasn't excited. Finally, he didn't have a meal but his phone was blown up. Boss Lu, you must be joking. When has Almighty Qin been gay? As for his relationship with Spade Z, you should ask him himself when you see him in the future. As Feng Yi replied, he wanted to rush over to the Qin family. How could such a photo be posted so casually? Boss Feng, don't hide it from me. If young Master Qin really likes men, I'll arrange a few younger ones for him next time. When Feng Yi heard that, he arched a brow and said with a fox-like viciousness, Boss Lu, you should know that Boss Qin doesn't like this kind of thing. You should keep the tender ones for yourself. Last time, Boss Zhang made the decision on his own and sent someone to young Master Qin. You saw it too. Lu seemed to have been choked by this reminder, and he laughed awkwardly. I was just joking. Young Master Qin must be busy with the competition recently. These people just randomly took out a photo and they're spouting nonsense. I'll have a good talk with my subordinates later. Feng Yi chuckled. It's because Almighty Qin and Little Spade have a good relationship and Almighty Qin treats him well. Boss Lu, you can report whatever you want. After all, the kids of Supreme Alliance have a good relationship. I'll try to stick close to the truth. I'll treat Boss Lu to a meal next time. Supreme Alliance has many promotional activities to do. Everyone knew how popular the Qin Group's team was. Any event could cause an explosion of topics. If he could get exclusive publicity, Boss Lu would definitely agree. Don't worry, there won't be any false reports. CP needs to be loved but there has to be a limit. I didn't expect Boss Lu to know about CP. Feng Yi usually had to deal with one thing before dealing with the other. Boss Lu didn't want to let go of the phone. I can't help it, don't you know how much my daughter loves that Spade Z from your family? She keeps telling me every day that if Big Spade belongs to Almighty Qin, she would be at ease. She even said that Lin Feng and Yun Hu are a perfect match. Why can't they be together officially? Brother Feng, let's make a deal. Can you give it to me privately? Dad, how many times have I told you not to do such things? Our Spade doesn't like it. I'm on the official Weibo now and there will be opportunities to interact with our Big Spade in the future. Don't go through the back door, it's unfair to the other Spade fans. Feng Yi could hear the crisp female voice over the phone. She chuckled. Your daughter is very sensible. President Lu. Was he implying that he was immature? Damn it, he loved his daughter so much that he couldn't even get her an autograph. Dad, tell Uncle Feng that there's no need. Boss Lu smiled bitterly. Brother Feng, you heard it. Feng Yi. I only heard her call him uncle. How am I an uncle? I'm so young. I heard you. Feng Yi wasn't very willing to say these 3 words. Chapter 783. Every single person who had accompanied Supreme Alliance to this day. Something that had never been extinguished in the depths of their hearts. Supreme Alliance would definitely win. Alright. Little cutie, if you confess, young Master Qin will definitely freeze you with his cold eyes. How should I put it? You should just bear with it. After hanging up such a positive phone call, Zhang Zian was stunned. Feng Yi didn't forget to look for the culprit. He called 2 times but no one picked up. Feng Yi inhaled deeply. He didn't call the 3rd time, instead, sending a WeChat message. I don't believe you can sleep peacefully with little Spade by your side. I know you aren't sleeping. Boss Qin, Almighty Qin, please pick up the phone. Qin Mo successfully saw through Feng Yi's resentment towards him in this message. He raised his hand slowly, picking up the 3rd call. What's the matter? His tone was nonchalant, as though he hadn't done anything. It isn't appropriate for you to send such a photo with such a caption. It isn't acceptable in the country, Feng Yi reminded him. Qin Mo asked, if you can't stand it, will you go crazy when I tell everyone that she really belongs to me? Feng Yi inhaled deeply. I'm not the one going crazy, the fans are. Boss Qin, Almighty Qin, even if you want to cause trouble, you have to take it easy. And what did he mean by she really belongs to me? Feng Yi felt the need to remind him again. Little Spade isn't of age yet. Don't worry, I won't do anything to her for now. I'm hanging up. Feng Yi glanced at the screen. Do? Did Boss Qin use the word do just now? Why did Little Spade seem even more dangerous after hearing it? Qin Mo did have the intention to do that to the person in front of him. But it wasn't perfect. She hadn't even taken the initiative to sit on his waist. How could it be perfect? Qin Mo reached out, his fingers sliding over the youngster's wrist. Then he held onto it, his lips curving upwards. He purposely lowered the temperature of the heater. It was cold on a rainy day and humans had an innate need for warmth. After a short while, Bojiu leaned over, automatically searching for a source of warmth. Qin Mo reached out his other hand and placed it on the other side of the youngster's head. He closed his eyes in an absolutely possessive position. Sooner or later, he would deal with this fellow. Bojiu didn't know anything but her body's memory was still there. Hence, when she woke up the next morning, her ears were red. He glanced at the Almighty, who was sleeping beside him, and jumped off the bed. After entering the bathroom, the first thing he did was to wash his face. Then, he checked his pajamas. Other than being a little messy, everything else was normal. Then why did she have such a dream? Bojiu looked at her own face in the mirror and flicked the stray silver hair that was stuck to her ear. It was the kind of numbness that rose from his tailbone when he was half asleep and half awake. She felt that the Almighty had touched her somewhere. Bojiu frowned. Or had she been dreaming? Had she automatically seen the Almighty's face? It was just a feeling. Have this dream. Bojiu's face heated up. She poured herself some cold water and placed both hands on the basin. That action was very handsome. Some men wouldn't be able to do it, but the youngster was the one who did it. It made her look tough. Qin Mo leaned against the bathroom door, his thin lips curved into a faint smile. Then he walked over slowly. Bojiu stilled. It was probably because the person in her dream had become the Almighty. Now that she saw that handsome and elegant face, she felt a chill run down her spine. Chapter 784. It was a subtle sense of guilt. Bojiu shifted her gaze to the left. But she never would have thought that the Almighty's first action after waking up would be to take off her pants. Brother Mo? Bojiu arched a brow. She took a swift step back, her movements beautiful. Qin Mo stuffed a hand into his pocket, his side profile perfect, his voice faint. Why are you reacting so strongly? Didn't you pee in the morning? What did he mean by throwing the match? Every man understood. Bojiu understood as well. The last thing she should have done was to say, good brothers should throw the game together, during their first gay meetup with the Almighty. Back then, Bojiu hadn't expected the Almighty to use such a rule on her. He had used it every single time. I've already done it. Brother Mo, you can pee yourself, I'll head down to see what Madame Zhang has prepared. Usually, the Almighty would let her go at such a time. This time. Bojiu watched as the man raised his arm, blocking her way. Let's go together after I'm done. His request. Bo Jiao wanted to reject him. On the other side, Qin Mo had already unzipped his pants, his long and slender hands looking fairer than ever. The previous dream had caused Bo Jiao to freeze in place, the temperature on her face rising. This was different from when she had worked on the variety show. Back then, she hadn't really taken advantage of the Almighty. In order to prevent the dream from happening again, Bo Jiao's gaze remained fixed, the heat on the tip of her ears never subsiding. When he lowered his lids, Qin Mo's thin lips curved upwards, his deep gaze filled with a smile. If Feng Yi had known about this, he would definitely say, shameless. Brother Mo, did I do anything to you last night? It was probably because of the awkward atmosphere. Bo Jiao felt that she had to say something. When Qin Mo heard her question, the smile in his eyes deepened. What did she do to him? Swoosh. He pulled up his pants. Qin Mo tilted his head, his entire body relaxed but his thick brows were furrowed. Why are you rubbing against me? Did you dream about something last night? Bo Jiao didn't reply. What should she say? That kind of dream? Fortunately, the Almighty didn't continue asking. Instead, he changed the topic. Did you brush your teeth? Yes. Bo Jiao was still wondering how she had managed to get close to the Almighty. It was a little dangerous since he was gay. Even though she was the one taking advantage of him, he was someone who had confessed to her. Let me check. Inspection? Bo Jiao lifted her head. His chin was lifted up by someone. Then came a kiss that tasted of lemon toothpaste. When the coolness fell on his lips, Bo Jiao was in a daze, her dark eyes trembling. Looks like he did. Qin Mo retracted his hand and looked at the person in front of him with a smile. All right, the examination is done. Let's go downstairs for dinner. Other than the Almighty, there was no one else who could speak so naturally. Bo Jiao, what kind of inspection was this? But it was all in the past. It would be a little pretentious to talk about it again. Bo Jiao had no choice but to grab Princess, who had witnessed everything from the side, and give him a good beating. The princess was also shocked. The first thing it did after waking up was to protect its master. But just now, his master had kissed this brat's lips. What was going on? Don't bully a cat for not being able to understand. That was clearly a kiss. Chapter 785. Madame Zhang had been tiptoeing ever since she had finished preparing breakfast, glancing towards the second floor. Her young master's reaction yesterday had been too strange. She was afraid something might have happened. But when she saw Qin Mo in his pure black uniform, walking down with a bag in one hand, Madame Zhang felt that she was overthinking. Her young master hadn't been in such a good mood in a long time. Even when he was eating his porridge, he seemed to have thought of something, lifting his lips. But that smile came too quickly. It was gone by the time young Master Jiao came down. Madame Zhang walked over, holding the uniform that Bo Jiao had taken off yesterday. Young Master Jiao, you can't wear young master's uniform, it's too big. Fortunately, I washed this one for you, hurry and change into it, you can leave with young master later. Bo Jiao glanced at the Almighty, who was still eating breakfast, and thanked Madame Zhang with a smile. She took the uniform and headed back upstairs. This morning was destined to be different for Supreme Alliance. In the East District, Shui Yaoyao lifted her lids and glanced at herself in the mirror. No one was willing to be ordinary. It was the same for her. The finals of the National League. The day had finally arrived. She pushed the door open. She was surprised to see two people standing under the jujube tree. One of them had a cigarette in his mouth while the other stuttered, it's here, I remember the address. Yin Guiyao glanced up, flicking the cigarette. It's indeed here, Yao Yao is behind you. Ah. Feng Shang turned around and smiled. His tender face was radiant. Yao Yao, why you don't know how how he bullied me when I slept with uncle yesterday. Yin Weiyao stopped smoking when he heard that. Feng Shang, speak properly. Bully. F***ck, I'm the only straight man in the entire Supreme Alliance, don't mess up my image. She saw her teammates early in the morning. She was touched. It made Shui Yaoyao forget all her nervousness. Let's go, Manager Feng will drive us to the venue personally. That day. In Jiang City, the morning fog was still thick. Even the car windows were foggy. But it was also the most unforgettable day for Shui Yaoyao. Even a long, long time later, when she retired from esports and fell asleep with her child in her arms, she could still remember the speed of her heartbeat. Very soon. Soon, whoosh. The youngster zipped up his uniform. He shoved his hands into his coat pockets. He stood with his back to the light, his legs long and slender, his back straight. His eyes watched the rising arc of the sun. Subsequently, the young man slowly walked into the darkness and pulled on the black wrist guard on his left hand. His combat uniform fluttered in the wind, and he looked very handsome. Even the princess couldn't help but complain about his aura. Qin Mo stood downstairs, waiting for a certain someone. He had a shoulder bag on his shoulder. His tall figure was elegant and noble. Feng Yi's driving skills weren't bad and it wasn't a problem for him to drive a business car. What's more, this commercial vehicle had been recorded by the compound, so it wasn't difficult to get in. All he had to do was sign. However, there was one thing that he had overlooked. Usually, it was the chauffeur who drove, and this car could fit all the passengers. Now that he had taken the driver's seat, there was one more person. When everyone, including Qin Mo, realized this, the atmosphere froze. But Qin Mo quickly opened his mouth, his tone calm. No need, let someone sit on my lap. Chapter 786. The moment he said that, almost everyone stilled. Especially the driver who had been snatched away from him. That someone definitely wasn't referring to him. Who else would dare to sit on their captain's lap? Lin Feng opened the bottle of mineral water, pretending to drink it. Yun Hu lifted his lids and glanced over. Yin Weyao's hand was scalded by the cigarette ash that fell. Feng Shang and Coco bit on a rabbit's ear each, their eyes widening. Feng Yi gripped the steering wheel and glared at Almighty Qin. Almighty Qin's shamelessness had reached a point where it made one's hair stand on end. He really didn't think that the young master he brought along, who was always indifferent to everything, would become like this once he fell in love with someone. Shameless, too shameless. Sit on his lap. Qin Mo didn't seem to care about how Feng Yi looked at him. It should be said that from the start, his deep gaze had been on the youngster. His expression was cold, as though saying, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take a seat." Of course, Bojio realized that the someone he was referring to was her, but did she need to sit on his lap? The driver hurriedly said, "Boss Qin, I'll alight, I'll just alight." Qin Mo swept the driver a glance. "If you leave, who's going to park the car? Are you going to let the vice president of a club park the car? Feng Yi is already accompanying others in the industry. If he's going to be a parking boy, how is the Qin group going to maintain its image?" Feng Yi. Wait a minute, explain yourself. What do you mean by accompanying others in the industry? How could a popular manager like him be described in such a manner? Almighty Qin, just say that you want little Spade to sit on your lap. Why are you insulting me? However, Old Fox Feng was still Old Fox Feng. He completely understood what his boss was thinking, and he would go along with it. After all, there was a tough battle to be fought in a while. If he made young Master Qin happy, he might even smile during the game's live stream and increase the number of online viewers. Hence, Foxy Feng lifted his thin lips. Little Spade, let's squeeze. Fortunately, the first match is in Jiang City, it won't take long. Hurry up and get on. Bojio glanced at the other 3 cars in the Qin family's house. One was a limited edition sports car, one was a military Land Rover, and one was a normal sedan. Before Bojio could finish her sentence, Chinemo reached out and pulled her into the car. The Almighty's side profile was still so handsome and elegant that she couldn't bear to sully it. Aren't you going to sit down? Are you going to take responsibility if I'm late? It was not a big deal to sit down. After all, there was a lot of space in the MPV. However, all the members of the team still had expressions that said, "I'm looking at the sky, not you guys." Bojio felt herself being pressed against his long legs, the Almighty's enviable hand around her waist and his expression that threatened to throw her out of the car window if she said another word. From this angle, the Almighty was still handsome and inviolable. She was probably thinking too much. In other words, she had taken advantage of the Almighty and sat on his thighs. It was just that he had never tried such a close distance. Chapter 787. His body structure was different from hers. It was hard and powerful, yet it carried a very hot temperature. Bojio's heart jumped. She looked over at Chinemo. The Almighty, on the other hand, looked very natural. He picked up the mineral water provided by the sponsor and raised his head to take a sip. Then, he turned his head and looked at her with that posture. Bojio moved again, mainly to avoid a certain part. After all, no matter how carefree one was, one's ears would turn red when faced with such a situation. Bojio felt that it wasn't safe for her to take advantage of him, so she wouldn't do it again. Half of the Almighty's body was still leaning against the car door. After noticing her movements, he narrowed his eyes and looked at her for a moment. He removed the bottle from his lips, twisted the cap, and raised his dark eyes. Taking advantage of the sound of the car engine, he lowered his voice and whispered in her ear, "Aren't you afraid that I'll react if you move around like that?" Rumble. The car started, rubbing against the ground and rolling through a wave of heat. Other than Bojio, no one heard the Almighty's words. After all, it would take them some time to digest the fact that little Spade was sitting on Chinemo. Not to mention listening to anything. Plus, the car itself had sound. Hence, only Bojio heard it. At that moment, his movements seemed to have stopped. Chinemo lifted his thin lips. "Do you want some water?" Bojio shook her head, narrowing her eyes. Was the Almighty taking advantage of her? Originally, he wanted to change seats or something. Everyone knew that the Almighty was shameless because he was good at attacking people's hearts. "I brought your candy in my pocket. Take it yourself. It's more convenient for you to be in this position." As soon as he heard there was sugar, Bojio felt that she should put the other questions aside. She moved her left hand and reached into his jacket pocket. There were indeed 2 candies, chocolate-flavored. She didn't stand on ceremony. She took one and put it in her mouth. Since he had to sit here regardless of whether he ate the candy or not, he might as well grab a candy first. However, the Almighty's breath was coming from the top left of his head. She didn't know what to do. Especially since he would look at her every time she moved, and their legs were pressed against each other. Well, it was true that some good brothers would often sit together like this. Especially when there was not enough space in the car. It was normal for everyone to squeeze like this. But Bojio had never expected herself to be the party involved. In particular, Manager Feng's driving skills were really not that good. Even though he didn't drink alcohol, he acted like he had drunk alcohol. He always liked to slam on the brakes. Once she braked, the Almighty had to stabilize her waist so that she wouldn't hit her forehead. But in that case, the two of them would be very close to each other. Coupled with the untimely impact, it was too late. Bojio turned towards the Almighty subconsciously. She saw that he was looking at her, so close that when their eyes met, she could even see the light in those dark eyes shattering. Very beautiful. The Almighty was indeed the type of person who was most suited to stand under the sun. Moreover, today was indeed unusual. The finals of the National League must have made the Almighty very happy, right? Bojio remembered that when she had been young, she had held a tortoise for him to see. Her pet had been like this too. As he washed her hands, he lectured her, telling her not to touch anything with bacteria in the future. In the end, with bright eyes, he prepared a small jar for raising tortoises for her and fed the tortoise with her every day. How should he put it? His mouth said no, but his body was very honest. Chapter 788. Bojo moved a few more times, bending her left leg to the side. She tried her best not to place her entire weight on the Almighty, adjusting her position to be more comfortable. Chin Mo watched the youngster on his lap, an uncontrollable emotion surging out from his chest. He wanted to treat her better. He must be crazy. Since there was someone else. He wanted to bully her every day, but he couldn't bear to do so. Chin Mo glanced over, placing his chin on her shoulder. He was in a good mood. His fingers moved slowly through her clothes, rubbing against her abdomen inch by inch. He realized he was addicted to this feeling. He didn't want to let go. This was the only person he didn't want to let go. The group at the back was playing in a subtle manner. Actually, there wasn't a single person who wasn't excited on this day. As the team that was about to enter the cold arena, all the Supreme Alliance fans were waiting anxiously for the slightest news about their team. Releasing information on the official platform was something every team would do. In the past, Lin Feng hadn't been sure what to post. Now that he saw the situation, he immediately snapped a photo of all the members, including himself. He posted it on the official Weibo with a single sentence. There are too many people, the car is too crowded. You can ignore the person sitting on Captain's lap since he isn't as handsome as me. Bojo didn't show her face in the photo, it was a normal sitting posture. Boys would usually cause a ruckus when they were together, especially those that liked to play games or exercise. It was common for high school students to cause a ruckus. But, Almighty Chin wasn't a high school student. When had Almighty Chin ever been so approachable? And now, he was letting Big Spade sit on his lap. The fans on the official Weibo were going crazy when they saw the photo. The entire country is going to be cold. I thought the Supreme Alliance members would be nervous, but they are still sending candy and torturing us single dogs. I'm relieved. The Almighty doesn't know what it means to be nervous. Almighty Lin, when you were talking about Big Spade, did you notice the hand you placed on Almighty Yun's shoulder? Pink, the screen is filled with pink, I don't want to say anything else, run 3 rounds downstairs. I won't run. I'll stay outside the venue and wait to see the real person. Before the start of Ju Han, the discussion was already very heated. When a photo like this was posted online, it made countless people's hearts beat even faster. Many years later, when some people, who had grown up from school, put down their work and accidentally saw this photo, they would be shocked. He would always smile subconsciously, thinking of that reckless and flamboyant youth. That was the youngest member of their favorite team. As for the Supreme Alliance, they were thinking back to the time when the Supreme Alliance had been defeated, the unwillingness that tore at their chests and the helplessness they felt when their screens turned gray. They were thinking, this day has finally come. When all the members stood at the entrance of the esports arena, no one could deny that the scene was so cool that it made people numb from head to toe. Everyone wore the same uniform, the same shoulder bag, and the team emblem flying on their backs. Everyone's posture was different. A total of 11 esports players were all geared up and ready to go. Who said that older people couldn't be professional players? Who said that ordinary girls didn't have the right to dream? Bojo, Chin Mo, Yunhu, Lin Feng, Yin Wuyao, Shui Yaoyao, Feng Shang, this group of people was here. The intensity of the fans' reaction could only be experienced by those who were close to the scene. Everyone was cheering, wishing that they could use all the strength they had. Many people understood why they liked this group of people so much. One fan's answer was simple and direct. Because they taught me what it means to move forward bravely. As many as 10 media outlets jointly reported, all the cameras were in the final adjustments. In order to record this opening, the most advanced high-definition camera and the adjustment of the live broadcast platform were brought in. What kind of sparks would be created when the dimension hit a wall? Everyone was looking forward to it. Perhaps only those who like to play games would have such a feeling. Just looking at that person made him feel like his blood was about to boil. However, there was one person who couldn't bear to see such a scene. That person wasn't anyone else, it was Wu Zhen, who rushed back to Jiang City overnight. She watched the scene, her fingers clenched. Even Su Mei, who was beside her, could feel the venom overflowing from those eyes. Su Mei didn't know what she was thinking. Chapter 789. Yes, ever since you mentioned it, I've been keeping this group. I've even promoted it on Tieba, using Spade Z's daily life to attract people into the group. It's been very effective. How are they doing now? Wu Zhen glanced at the extremely popular Supreme Alliance members not far away. A faint voice came from the other side of the phone. Everything is fine. After all, when you created the group, you said that it was Spade Z's fan club. As long as those people saw that it was a fan club for Spade Z, they would join us. But that was just the beginning. In the past, they really liked Spade Z, but now, my position in their hearts is higher than Spade Z's. I chat with them, talk to them, and use Spade Z to organize them to write some fanfiction. They are happy writing it, and they don't want to offend anyone. Because of this, Spade Z's official fan club came to warn me, but what's the use? I told the people in the group that since everyone likes Spade Z, it doesn't matter what kind of love it is. It's the official fan club that thinks too highly of themselves. They don't doubt me and feel wronged. Don't worry, they have already formed this mindset. They don't even care about copyright infringement. Why would they care about Spade Z's life? That's good. Wu Zhen narrowed her eyes. He made so many people like him just because of his gaming. We can make use of this to attack him. We will snatch away his things and glory, then let him be attacked by his former fans. How do you think he will feel? That person laughed. He will definitely be in so much pain. Wu Zhen was satisfied with the answer. Good, I'm already in Jiang City, at the competition venue. Go and tell them that Spade Z is actually a girl in disguise. I'll also say a few words in the group and let them cause a ruckus. That person paused. If I say that, will Supreme Alliance, what are you afraid of? It will take some time for them to investigate you over the internet. When they really find you, don't you still have me to help you? Wu Zhen cut him off lightly. That person thought about it. I will do it immediately. Wu Zhen smiled, glancing up at the team members entering one after another. Su Mei had also heard the whole story. She had really underestimated this young Miss Wu. She had not expected her to be so resourceful. This time, that little bastard is going to be out of luck. After all, in this industry, some private groups were created because they liked it. There were also some private groups that used each other to attract fans and brainwash them. There was no need to brainwash them, just chatting was enough to influence each other. He hadn't expected Wu Zhen to be so smart as to create such a group. Wu Zhen tilted her head. Go spend some money. We will go through the VIP channel and head straight to the team's resting area. I want to tell Brother Mo personally. No problem. Su Mei still had her own connections in the business world. After all, she had also opened an esports company. It would not be a problem for her to enter the competition. The match was getting closer and closer. Everyone was in a different mood. In the ups and downs, there were other hot-blooded things. Lin Feng looked as though he was going to hold a wedding today. It was a pity that the person beside him wasn't the bride but Yunhu. Yunhu wasn't used to this guy's sudden change in style. He reached out and pinched his nose. Lin Feng snapped back to his senses. What are you doing? Do you know if it hurts? I woke you up because you were distracted. Yunhu stuffed a hand into his pocket, standing in the resting area. Lin Feng sighed. You don't understand. I always feel that being too excited isn't a good thing. I can't even hold the mouse properly. Can't hold the mouse properly? Yunhu glanced at him. The mouse is better than my private area. You can even hold my little Yunhu. It's just a mouse, what are you so excited about? Lin Feng had been really nervous just now. Now that Yunhu said that, his face turned red instantly. He held it in for a long time before saying, F***ck, when did Yunhu become so shameless? Chapter 790. But there was one thing Lin Feng didn't say. Because he felt that he couldn't say it out loud. Who could have imagined that one day, he would see his good brother, who had grown up with him in the same pants, actually flirting with his photo. Hitting. At that time, his whole body froze there. He really froze there. He wasn't even mentally prepared. 10,000 alpacas ran past him. He wanted to find a crack and bury himself in it. However, even a grown man would get angry when he saw another grown man flirting in front of his photo. At that time, he was also angry. He ran over angrily and wanted to beat this person up. But that was Yunhu. How could he bear to hit him? What the F***ck, of all people, why did you have to shoot at my photo? He couldn't bear to hit him, but he had to remind him verbally. I'm your brother. Even if I was once the campus belle, I'm straight from top to bottom, tell me. What did Yunhu say then? Yes. This fellow said, sorry, but I can't control myself. At that time, this fellow's expression was one of despair. He didn't know why, but he looked especially sad. Because he had never seen Yunhu like that. In his impression, that person had been extremely arrogant since he was young. He wasn't like his captain, who was indifferent. This person was really arrogant. That arrogance was hidden under his reticent appearance. He was domineering. He had been like that since he was young. When he grew up, he became a person that many people liked. Those juniors in the university, some of them specially went to the basketball court and the library to wait for him. Just to see what he was wearing today, to see if he was handsome again. He dared to say that even if this fellow pushed his spectacles when he was reading English materials, those juniors would want to take a photo and post it. Of course, he wasn't bad himself. But he was different from this fellow. This fellow was really easy to find a girlfriend. If he said that he wanted to be in a relationship, he didn't know how many people would fall for him. Unlike him, even if some people became his girlfriend, they would say that his skin was too white and that they would feel inferior when they stood with him. Lin Feng always wanted to tan himself a little more after being used like this. He always envied Yunhu, that fellow definitely didn't know what it was like to have a crush. On that day, when he turned his head, he was just lying on the bed, not looking at Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't know what he was thinking. When his black hair fell down, it covered his eyes. You always say that I don't understand the feeling of having a crush. Lin Feng, have you ever thought about the reason why I don't find a girlfriend or a boyfriend? No matter how naive Lin Feng was, he understood what his brother meant when he saw Lin Feng's photo. To be honest, he couldn't bear to see Yunhu like that. When he asked, do you think I'm disgusting? At that moment, he felt that his ears and face were burning. He hurriedly explained, no, I really didn't. But big brother, why are you shooting at my photo? Yunhu glanced up abruptly. When he saw his expression, his voice was calm. If you're disgusted, tell me. Who are we? I'm really not disgusted. Lin Feng was afraid that his brother would misunderstand. But you have to give me some time to adapt, right? Why are you? F***ck, I don't know what to say. Anyway, I'm not disgusted, but you can't shoot at me. Yunhu glanced at him. He probably felt that his thoughts were in a mess. Anyway, he didn't understand that gaze. The competition is about to start. My mood will directly affect the outcome of the competition. Oh right, that was what he suddenly said to him. Don't reject me. Lin Feng scratched his head. He was really a little crazy. But what could he do? That was Yunhu. Lin Feng didn't agree or reject him. He first gave Yunhu a punch and then pulled him. King, get up first. Let's play a 2v2. He didn't have the intention to distance himself. He was organizing his thoughts. More importantly, shooting. Shooting. Lin Feng lifted his head and looked at the person standing beside him in the uniform. Suddenly, his hands stopped trembling. Shut up. His face was a little hot. He had to be noticed. Yunhu didn't seem to care about a certain someone exploding. He reached out and handed him a wrist guard. Wear it. Not all esports teams like to wear wrist guards. It seemed like only the Supreme Alliance liked it. This had to do with their gaming habits. Lin Feng originally thought that no one saw any changes on his old face. Unexpectedly, the youngster who had been sitting by the window with a lollipop in her mouth suddenly jumped down with both hands. The zipper of his uniform wasn't pulled all the way up to his head. He walked up to him with a smile and put a hand on his shoulder. What happened just now? It's rare to see you look like you've been stripped naked. What did he mean by being stripped naked? Was Little Spade's language taught by a physical education teacher? Lin Feng was about to reply. Just then, he felt an especially cold gaze from behind him. That gaze didn't belong to anyone else. Their captain. It was especially intense. It was more intense than any other time. Was it an illusion? He felt that their captain was especially concerned about Little Spade being intimate with him. Youngster, move your hand away. Sometimes, Lin Feng knew how to protect himself. He didn't want his captain to use his shoulder as an example, so he jumped over to Yunhu. But the moment he jumped, he realized that he was an idiot. Yunhu was more dangerous than anyone else. He turned to Coco's side. Coco was discussing with Feng Shang about how to bite a rabbit. One of them spoke extremely quickly while the other stuttered. The two of them didn't seem to have any communication barriers. Yin Wuyao was right about one thing. He felt that other than him, no one else in the team was straightforward. Of course, it was all to adjust their emotions before the competition. The National League was too important to everyone. Shui Yaoyao had already started her final checkup. It was to prevent any accidents during the competition. Originally, the atmosphere in the lounge was good. But right at this moment, suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Everyone in the team turned towards the door. At first, they thought it was the staff and fans that Feng Yi had arranged for. Unexpectedly, the person who came wasn't Feng Yi. Instead, it was Wu Zhen, who had appeared at this time. Everyone was about to compete. Naturally, they didn't want anyone to enter the lounge at this time. They didn't expect anyone other than the members to enter. Everyone was looking at each other. Yunhu understood the current situation. For example, the Yin family had started to break off their relationship with the Wu family in some business alliances. These couldn't be done by old Master Yin. It was done by Captain's grandson. Captain had also expressed that Wu Zhen shouldn't stay in the crime squad. Hence, it was obvious that Captain didn't have a good impression of Miss Wu. This time, she came looking for them at this time. Something wasn't right. Bo Jiao stopped what she was doing. She didn't see Wu Zhen. Instead, she saw the three behind her. Were they in cahoots? Bo Jiao raised a brow. She put her hands down and glanced up at the other party. Her eyes were so dark that they seemed to be able to see through everything. From Su Mei's expression, it was easy to tell that they were here to cause trouble. Moreover, they were here to cause trouble for her. Lin Feng was still in a daze. But even so, Lin Feng could still recognize Su Mei. After all, she was Little Spade's 3. He remembered that she had contacted him and wanted to use his connections to let her son enter Supreme Alliance. Lin Feng never had a good impression of such people. What was going on? Chapter 791. Sure, let's go somewhere else. Suddenly, Chin Mo stood up, a smile on his face. Everyone knew that Chin Mo rarely smiled, but when he did, there was a devilish allure. He extinguished the cigarette in his hand and glanced at Wu Zhen, speaking slowly, "Let's talk in private." Wu Zhen had never seen Chin Mo in such a state. His uniform was half open and he wore a t-shirt inside, looking extremely handsome and oppressive. He even pulled her out of the lounge. Wu Zhen chuckled. She could feel the aura close to her and turned to glance at Bojiu. Bojiu lifted her fingers. How should she put it? She felt as though her pet was being insulted. Yunhu furrowed his brows. Lin Feng blurted out, F***ck, he couldn't help turning towards his teammates. Don't you think Captain is behaving strangely today? The others were confused, but even then, they knew one thing. Captain doesn't ignore girls, regardless of who they are. He doesn't even bother with boys, Coco added. Except for little Spade. Bojiu arched a brow. She bit the zipper of her jacket and lowered her head to pull it up. She smiled. I'm going to pee, you guys can continue. Lin Feng immediately understood what the youngster meant. He walked over and patted Bojiu's shoulder. Don't worry, Captain has already been turned gay by you. He probably can't be straight anymore. You're the only one looking for him, so don't be jealous. If you have to pee, don't suffocate yourself. Bojiu. Do you know that I'm even sadder when I hear you say that he can't be straight anymore? Alright, I understand. Bojiu patted Lin Feng. I'll ask you about what happened with Almighty Yun another day. I don't have time to care about your feelings today, little submissive Lin. With that, Bojiu turned to leave. Lin Feng's outstretched arm froze in midair. Little submissive Lin. Little submissive. Submissive? Submissive your head. Even if I'm with Yunhu, I'm still on the offensive. As soon as Lin Feng roared out this sentence, the entire lounge fell silent. Almost all the team members were looking at him. Yunhu glanced at him. Lin Feng was stunned. He felt that he had done something stupid again. He tried his best to explain that, I didn't mean it that way. I just. So you two are really together. Coco bit the rabbit's ear. Then why did you lie to me last time and say that you guys are just brothers? But it's okay, Brother Feng, all of us will wish you and Brother Tiger the best. Feng Shang nodded his head in agreement. Shui Yaoyao asked curiously, did you plan to announce the news today? It's the first day of the finals, so it's more memorable. Lin Feng wanted to continue. His left hand was suddenly held in the palm of someone's hand. Turning his head, he saw a chiseled side profile and a deep voice. That's right, we plan to announce it today. Lin Feng widened his eyes. Announce? What? What he just said was just, thank you everyone for your blessings. After the competition, I'll treat you to barbecue and drinks. Damn it, it's not like we're getting married. What do you mean by treating me to a drink? Lin Feng was about to explode. Yunhu glanced over. The competition is about to start, don't let it affect your mood no matter how excited you are. Lin Feng, forget it, the competition was more important. This fellow was getting more and more shameless. F***ck. Chapter 792. Shui Yaoyao was worried about the same thing as Lin Feng. Ever since Su Mei had appeared, Shui Yaoyao felt uneasy. Besides, that person had come with Wu Zhen. She hadn't forgotten the call Jiang Zhua had received from Wu Zhen. She was starting to worry about what Wu Zhen wanted to say to Almighty Qin. If she wanted to talk about that secret, what would His Highness Zhou do? Shui Yaoyao started to feel uneasy at the thought. She wanted to head out and tell Bojiu. But at this moment, Feng Yi appeared, wiping his sweat. He was dressed in a proper suit, looking very businesslike. The seating arrangements are almost done, there are official and unofficial ones. There's less than an hour until the competition, get ready. With that, he scanned the resting area, frowning. Where are Little Spade and Almighty Qin? They're out. Feng Shang was more daring at this moment. Feng Yi frowned even deeper. They're going out now? Wu Zhen is here. Yunhu glanced at him, hinting at something. There should be something. Others might not know, but as Supreme Alliance's manager, Feng Yi knew what it meant. Young Master Qin had already terminated his partnership with the Wu family. Wu Zhen's appearance wasn't a good sign. He thought back to the incident of the coke being splashed by the haters. The more Feng Yi thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. He narrowed his eyes. I'm going to take a look at the audience. Stay here and wait for Little Spade. All right. Okay. Just like that, when Shui Yaoyao wanted to head out, the youngster was long gone. Similarly, Bo Jiu didn't follow him. Since she couldn't keep up, there was no need to force it. She reached out to wear her black mask, using one hand to push herself over the obstacle in front of her. Her phone rang in her pocket. It was a phone call. There wasn't any caller ID. Bo Jiu recognized the string of numbers. Tilting his body to the side, he dodged the incoming group of fans and quickly swung his body to the side. Then, his back was pressed against the wall. The fans were still chatting and laughing, completely unaware that there was someone in front of them. Bo Jiu was too fast. Once the footsteps were far away, Bo Jiu picked up the call. Hello, Hoshino. According to the hint you gave, the information was purchased successfully. Tracking has begun. Hoshino was also at the venue, but he was in disguise and sat in the audience seats. The corner of the youngster's mouth curled up. After the competition, we'll look into it. But there might be some trouble on my side. Trouble? Hoshino glanced sideways, his eyes clear. Do you need me to go over? Bo Jiu swung her head back. There's no need, let's compete first. I'll probably know what trouble I'll be facing soon. If anything happens, we'll activate the plan. However, we have to wait for the competition to end. He couldn't lose this match. She said it before. She would never let anyone drag that person down from his pedestal. Except for this point. She could handle anything. Even if the Almighty found out that she was Z. In the distance, the voices of the fans could still be heard. The influence was great, and it was enough to show how many people had come to the finals. The other side. Wu Zhen and Su Mei were brought to a meeting room. Su Mei understood the meaning behind Wu Zhen's gaze. She walked to the door and didn't follow. That person probably wanted to enjoy her and young Master Qin's private world. She wouldn't disturb them. Anyway, in less than an hour, that gaye's reputation would be ruined. Forget about young Master Qin. Chapter 793. Su Mei originally wanted to wait outside the door to see how the gaye would be ruined by his fans, but she didn't expect that the moment she sat down, a Special Forces soldier would walk over from the corridor. The Special Forces soldier's military uniform was already eye-catching, and coupled with his unforgettable appearance and aura, Ongen was none other than the person who had stolen their birth records from the county hospital. Su Mei wasn't stupid. With her usual scheming, she knew that if he was really a soldier stationed in the county, he wouldn't be here. Now that he was here, it could only mean one thing: he was most likely from the Qin family. Because young Master Qin was here. Before Su Mei could stand up, the Special Forces soldier had already walked over. He had a roguish smile, as though he had been in the army for many years. Young Master Qin asked me to catch a turtle in a jar, and it was the right decision. Did you really think that you could get away scot-free by using your connections? Now that you've escaped, I can wipe out the Wu family. Hearing this, Su Mei seemed to understand something, the blood draining from her face instantly. She wanted to turn around and tell Wu Jin not to say anything. But it was too late. They thought that young Master Qin didn't know anything. Now it seemed. Not only did young Master Qin know everything, but he had already decided to deal with them. Why? Just because of that little country bumpkin. Sume was filled with hatred, but what could she do? She had already been caught red-handed. And in the conference room just a door away. Wu Zhen had never been so excited before because she, the proud daughter of heaven, had suffered too many setbacks because of Spadesy, based on what? This time, she didn't just want to snatch all the glory from the other party. She wanted to let him have a taste of the backlash from her fans. Wu Zhen felt even happier at this thought. She was about to speak. The person sitting in the boss's chair tilted his head and lit a cigarette, holding it between his slender fingers. He said slowly, "If you're here to tell me that Spadesy is actually a girl, you don't have to say anymore." All of a sudden, Wu Zhen felt as though a bucket of cold water had been poured over her head, extinguishing all her glee. Qin Mo held a lighter in his hand, fiddling with it. "Goshawk, come in." At this moment, Wu Zhen realized that it wasn't a lighter, but a communication device that only the special forces had. Pa. The way the SWAT soldier pushed open the door was a little rough, using a kick. The main reason was that he was still holding onto a person. Wu Zhen whipped her head back, glancing at the soldier before turning back to Su Mei. Her lips were trembling. "Brother Mo, you shouldn't have done this to me, why shouldn't I do the same to you?" With a loud smack, the ashtray on the conference table was thrown onto the wall behind her. Wu Zhen was stunned because she had never seen Qin Mo in such a state. Qin Mo stood up and lowered his body. With his battle uniform on, he looked as though he was killing someone in a game. "Abusing your power and harming others, you don't deserve to say those dirty tricks in front of that person. Aren't you good at playing? Let me play with you then. Old Master Wu bailed you out and allowed you to come to Jiang City the next day. He must have used a lot of connections. Who did he bribe? Who did he get involved with? This time, I'll deal with all of them." Chapter 794. Are you happy to hear this news? You don't even have the heart to touch me. The person who was splashed with coke by your fan hasn't even complained. What right do you have to complain? Don't worry, this time, the Wu family will be buried with you. Wu Zhen's face had never been so pale. Especially when she heard the words this time, "The Wu family will be buried with you." Her face turned even uglier. What did I do wrong? She wasn't willing to be treated this way. She clenched her fists and roared. The Special Forces soldier found it hilarious when he heard this. Young Master had made it clear that she abused her power and harmed others. What did she do wrong? Where did this weird thought process come from? Wu Zhen clenched her fists. "I did all this because I like you. This kind of love disgusts me." Qin Mo didn't even glance at Wu Zhen when he said this. Wu Zhen was angry and hateful, but there was nothing she could do. She had never expected such an outcome. This wasn't what she had expected at all. The more Wu Zhen thought about it, the deeper she bit her lips. Su Mei knew about the relationship between the En family and the Wu family. Her mind turned, and she wanted to make a final struggle. "Young Master Qin, Miss Wu didn't do anything wrong. She just likes you. Don't be like this, it's not good for anyone." "Oh." Qin Mo arched a brow, smiling faintly. "You must be the Miss Su who interfered in someone else's family. So in the world of the three, you are the wronged party after hurting someone. You say you didn't do anything wrong? I don't want to listen here. Goshawk will bring you to the police station. What you did is enough for you to stay in there for a while. Go and talk to the prisoners. After all, you don't have any morals or legal knowledge. You should be able to talk. I still have a competition, so I'll take my leave." When Qin Mo said these words, he was really like a devil. From the beginning to the end, he was very elegant, but he was able to hit the snake where it hurt. Wu Zhen wanted to say something, but a group of people rushed in from the other side of the door. They were wearing the same uniform she used to wear. But compared to her, the aura they exuded was completely different. "Miss Wu, Miss Su, please come with us." Wu Zhen was really going crazy. Her fingers dug into the wooden chair, but she couldn't resist the current situation. When her hands were cuffed, she lowered her head and laughed, her face a little twisted. "Brother Mo, do you really think I'll give up just because you're doing this to me? Spade Z won't have a good ending either. Just you wait and see how her fans will destroy her." In an instant, Qin Mo stopped in his tracks and turned around, taking large strides towards Wu Zhen. Then, he pulled the man up. His eyes were filled with anger. "What did you do?" Qin Mo was really smart. Wu Zhen's words were enough for him to connect the dots. Wu Zhen laughed maniacally. Qin Mo knew he wouldn't be able to get anything out of her. Retracting his hand, his gaze deepened. "Take them away. Don't interrogate them too quickly. Take your time. Miss Wu has always cared about her reputation. Bring her around the police station and tell everyone what she's done." Qin Mo. Wu Zhen was filled with hatred. His eyes seemed to be emitting poison. Qin Mo didn't have time to deal with this person. He opened the meeting room door with a bang. He made a call as he walked. The call was to Feng Yi. Chapter 795. Until Qin Mo called for the second time. Feng Yi was walking in the middle of the hall. There were spectators everywhere. Under such circumstances, Feng Yi was starting to panic. But the more anxious he was, the more he told himself to calm down. After the coke splashing incident last time, Yi Zichen's expression changed. This time, he was much more vigilant. If anything happened, there would definitely be a way to gather these people. But Feng Yi couldn't think of the method. After all, everything came from the uneasiness in his heart. Until someone beside him reminded him. "Boss Feng." Feng Yi saw the call and picked it up immediately. "Hello, young Master Qin. There's a situation with the fans." That was Qin Mo's first sentence. "Don't arrange for them to enter yet." Feng Yi didn't want to arrange for them to enter either. He glanced at the dense crowd. "Young Master Qin, it's too late. They are already looking for their seats." Qin Mo narrowed his eyes, walking even faster. "Go look for the president of Little Spade's official fan club, Sister Turtle. I don't have much time, just 10 minutes, hold them off for me for 10 minutes. Feng Yi tightened his grip on the phone. "All right, but I'm not sure how they will organize it." "Illegitimate group," Qin Mo said slowly. "They wouldn't dare to do such things on a transparent platform. Instead, they would create an illegitimate group to gather fans and cut off their connection with the outside world. It's easy to brainwash them. Feng Yi, you told me the coke incident wouldn't happen again. This time, I hope you can do it. You said you would protect every esports player. Right now, she needs your protection." Feng Yi stilled, his lips curling up, returning to his foxy self. "I understand. Don't worry, I'm still a qualified manager." As he said this, Feng Yi had already started walking towards the west, pushing aside the audience one by one as he excused himself. No one had ever seen the elegant vice boss Feng in such a state. He was the most famous manager in the esports industry, his hair never messed up, but today, it was messed up. All in order to reach a certain place earlier. But Feng Yi had just arrived. Sister Turtle spoke up with a solemn expression. "Mr. Feng, something seems to have happened." Feng Yi didn't ask why. The other party held a fan's hand and walked to his side. "Tell Mr. Feng." Only I entered a group. At first, I thought it was a group that liked Big Spade, but then I realized it wasn't the case. They used Big Spade to attract fans, and after infringing on Big Spade's copyright, they said they weren't at fault, ignoring the 3 warnings from the officials. The other party's manager said the official fans couldn't represent Big Spade, and that if they wanted to resolve this matter, they would let Big Spade take the legal route himself. I really don't know, when did a thief become so thick-skinned? The person who infringed on someone else's rights was in the right? Big Spade probably found it weird too, so he posted a message on his official Weibo, saying, "Don't disband the group that infringed on your rights." I thought they would restrain themselves after Big Spade spoke personally, but that wasn't the case. First, the group leader came out and said, "Isn't it just an apology? I apologize, but I didn't do anything wrong. The group will not be disbanded." That wasn't all, the group manager jumped out as though he had lost his memory, saying that even though there wasn't a need to treat a thief with respect, Spade Z's actions of letting the fans of both sides quarrel and taking the legal route were extreme. The manager was the one who wanted Big Spade to take the legal route, and now the one who was biting Big Spade to the extreme was the same manager. Some people in the group didn't understand what was going on, and started to hate Little Spade. Infringement is harm, it's a mistake, it's not only forbidden by law, it's also forbidden by morality. I don't understand what's going on in this world, morally we should be condemning, but why is the thief the one in the right? Now they have something to say, and I'm worried that this will hurt Big Spade. I used to be one of them, but I'm glad that I saw the whole story from the outside world. Otherwise, I'm really afraid I'll become that kind of person, the kind of person who steals something I like and treats it as my own, not caring who it belongs to. I like someone, and I use the excuse of liking him to hurt him. I don't want to grow up like that, I have my own bottom line. Even though there weren't many Spade Z fans around, they were all people who had accompanied the youngster all the way. Hearing this, there wasn't a single person who wasn't angry, it was a darkness they couldn't imagine. And the angriest person couldn't resist Chin Mo, who was walking over. He just stood there. Even though he knew that at this moment, his appearance would cause quite a commotion. Even though he knew that there were some things he wouldn't be forgiven for. But right now, Chin Mo didn't care if anyone forgave him or not. Ever since he started playing the game, he had always been fearless and indifferent. Even now. That group, where is it? Almost everyone could feel the aura emanating from Chin Mo's body, it was bone-chilling. It's on my phone, I haven't returned it. The child was a little stunned by Almighty Chin's attitude. Unexpectedly, Almighty Chin praised her. Smart. Then he spread his hands. Can I take a look at your phone? The girl didn't know how to react. Chin Mo smiled. Phone give my wallet to the child, my identity card is in it, I'm not a person who would steal a phone. The girl waved her hand. Almighty Chin, that's not what I meant. Then take my wallet, I'll use my privacy to exchange for your phone. Don't worry, I won't look at the other messages on your phone. Chin Mo stood tall and slender, his uniform draped over his body, watching the commotion over there. His voice was low but firm. For this matter, I want to thank you on behalf of Little Spade, on behalf of the Supreme Alliance. Similarly, it's not just Big Spade, all of us who play sports are never afraid of people turning anti-fans or fans turning anti-fans. We are afraid that those who truly support us, those who give us strength, will be deceived in such a way. Our anger will always come from not being able to protect what is important to us. At this point, Chin Mo paused, his deep eyes like a burning lamp, never extinguishing. And the Big Spade that you like, to me, is as important as 1,000 pieces of gold. Feng young Master Chin, Almighty Chin, if you have something to say it properly. Chapter 796. To be honest, the fans of Spade City were a little confused. They were confused by Almighty Chin's last sentence. One of the girls tugged at Sister Turtle's sleeve. Sister, did you hear that? Sister Turtle had a lot going on in her mind. For example, she didn't expect Almighty Chin to be gay so openly. Facing the 2 cuties who were looking at her, she coughed heavily, not knowing what to say. But it didn't matter how almighty Qin wanted to be gay. What mattered was that something had gone wrong. Obviously, almighty Qin could see more clearly than anyone else. He just swiped his phone screen twice, then looked up at the venue. It was crucial to find out who planned this. After all, time was tight. Qin Mo's eyes scanned from left to right. Fortunately, after the last incident, Feng divided the official and unofficial fans into two groups when he arranged for people to enter the venue. However, the unofficial members of the fan club were not necessarily part of the organizers this time. Qin Mo's eyes darkened bit by bit, almost turning black. Sister Turtle had been through all this, so she knew what the situation was like now. Ever since the official Spade Z fan club was established, there were many fan groups related to Spade Z. The officials reminded people not to join them and to come to the official fan club. But the officials didn't care whether they joined them or not. But this time, it was obviously different. Through a medium called the group, they gathered Spade fans with the reason of liking him, and then caused tortious damage to Big Spade. The other party was sure that they couldn't find them among the many unofficial fans. It was easy to imagine what the thoughts of the person who had organized this were. Time was really tight. There was only half an hour left before the start of the competition. Every time the clock ticked, whether it was Feng Yi or the people who knew about this, their mood would sink a little. There was an indescribable feeling of powerlessness. The feeling of being unable to breathe. The feeling of knowing that the other party was going to hurt you, and even after hurting you, they would bite you back. It spread from their hands to their eyes. Some of the cute girls really turned their heads, a little like crying. They were thinking, why couldn't they protect that person? They wanted to tell the world how good that person was. But they couldn't even protect that person. Watching everything unfold before his eyes, he was so angry that his fingers trembled. How could it be like this? This world should not be like this. Qin Mo stood there for a full 30 seconds. Then he picked up his phone and dialed a number. His voice was deep. "Fatty, bring your notebook to the front desk of the venue, now." This call meant that Qin Mo had thought of a way to solve this problem. It was to use Fatty's hacking skills. But no one expected it. As soon as Qin Mo finished speaking. Chapter 797. Qin Mo looked at the guy in front of him, not saying a word. Bo Jiao removed her mask, arching a brow. "Trust me, I'm much faster than him when it comes to investigating." With that, Feng Yi was reminded of how Little Spade had shown off her amazing internet skills during the selection contest. But this matter would affect Little Spade's mood. The competition was about to start. If Little Spade was the one to investigate, it would mean, the intelligent Bo Jiao glanced at Feng Yi's expression and seemed to understand something. She smiled brightly. "The competition will start in 27 minutes. It's not like I haven't crossed hands with Fatty before. It would take at least half an hour for him to check something. I can settle it in 10 minutes. Since Supreme Alliance has made it this far, the competition should be the most important. There were too many people's blood, sweat and tears in this competition. The Uncle Yin she knew, the Shui Yao Yao she knew, the Feng Sheng she knew. And the pet she had found when she came here. She had always said it. Compared to his looks, she liked the Almighty's values more. He was the main attacker who could take on 5 opponents at once, but he had been a support for so many years. Because Supreme Alliance needed him to play like this, he played like this. That kind of responsibility was rare. Bo Jiao had always been alone. If you asked her what her values were, it would be a blur. But it was more important to protect this person. Supreme Alliance couldn't lose anymore. Perhaps after today, she might not be able to fight alongside him anymore. But no matter what, she had to ensure that nothing went wrong. "Let me investigate." Bo Jiao glanced up at Qin Mo, her eyes shining brightly like never before. Those who understood her would understand that she had made up her mind. Hoshino was in the arena too, leaning against the railing as he glanced over. Their original plan was to investigate the suspects after the competition. They immediately went to investigate the suspects that the key crimes unit had identified. It was obvious that Z was in trouble. Otherwise, she wouldn't have asked to investigate in front of Chin Mo. Otherwise, she wouldn't have mentioned it in front of Chin Mo. Z wouldn't have done that in the past. Z wouldn't have done that in the past. She would have a perfect disguise. The moment she picked up the notebook, it would mean that she had given up a layer of disguise. Hoshino wasn't sure if Chin Mo would notice anything from this incident. But for Z, it was undoubtedly an extra layer of danger. Why would Z do this? Hoshino glanced sideways. His eyelashes were long, and his eyes were filled with questions. But in the next second, he smiled. Did he find something else that he wanted to protect? Just as Hoshino had this thought, he heard a voice from the other side. It was slightly deep. Give this guy a laptop. It was Chin Mo. He kept his phone and looked at the youngster. 10 minutes. If I can't find anything, I will get Feng to clear the area. No problem. Bo Jiu was naturally excited when it came to investigating. After all, under the Almighty's supervision, it had been a long time since she had the chance to break codes or attack websites. As a hacker, it was lonely to be reduced to playing games. However, can you tell me what I want to investigate first? Chin Mo reached out and passed the girl's phone to her. Bo Jiu slid it twice, her expression serious. The brainwashing is impressive, I'm impressed. Feng Yi. Is this the time to praise him? Little Spade, wake up. Chapter 798. The horns signaling the start of the competition rang once more. Supreme Alliance's fans weren't the only ones present, there were fans from other teams as well. In such a scene, everyone was waiting for the final support. If it had been 10 years ago, esports would have been an unpopular industry. But now, large-scale esports competitions were enough to attract millions of people. The large screen in the arena opened with a swoosh. Before the competition, there would always be an introduction of the investors. Everyone who came to watch the competition was looking for their corresponding seats. Anyone who had watched an esports competition before could imagine the majestic scene of a sea of people. But, even in such a noisy environment, Yi Zichen could not help but laugh. There was someone who didn't seem to be affected at all. She sat in the middle of the audience, her laptop on her legs. She inserted the USB she carried with her into the port. She hadn't put on her uniform yet, that head of silver hair was too eye-catching. Without a word, Chin Mo tore off his uniform and threw it over her head. This way, even if the media rushed over, they wouldn't be able to interrupt what she was about to do. The other fans understood that time was of the essence and they couldn't allow anyone to disturb Big Spade at this moment. They stood on the left and right, forming a protective wall. They tried their best not to come over. Most of the time, this was all they could do. Bo Jiu's fingers moved. When she noticed the movements of the fans, she lifted her face and smiled. Thank you. Seeing this, a little cutie was very excited. After all, they really liked Big Spade, especially when Big Spade was playing. He was so handsome. But this little cutie was a guy. Even when confessing, he had to first glance at Almighty Chin. After that, he didn't dare to confess to his idol. How awkward. Bo Jiu didn't beat around the bush. She turned on the hotspot on her phone and connected to the laptop. Then she pushed the laptop out and said to a blushing girl, "Can you log into your account? If there is an account in the group, it will be easy to lock onto the other party's IP address." The girl nodded. When she inched closer to the youngster, her hands trembled slightly. Bo Jiu arched a brow and reached out to hold the girl. Don't be nervous. The girl thought to herself, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. How can he be so handsome? His skin is so smooth and his voice is so gentle. I want to pinch him, but unfortunately, Almighty Chin is here. Chin Mo was indeed standing at the side. in order to be able to move better. Bojio's ability to search and Qin Mo's deduction. It could be said that this was a top-notch combination. Many people thought that by hiding behind the internet, they could do whatever they wanted. In fact, that was not the case. There were many ways to find someone. As long as he found the other party's IP address, he would be able to lock onto the other party's location. Even if the other party used a mobile phone to log into the account, some things had been concealed. But that wasn't a problem for her. Of course, any breakthrough would require dialogue. Bojio was a hacker. Naturally, she had her own ways to lock onto the target. First, you need a port. The moment Bojio placed her fingers on the keyboard, those who saw this scene had nothing but amazement in their eyes. Because no one could clearly see how the young man's fingers were typing, they only felt that it was a kind of cool flowing water. He didn't even use the mouse. Instead, he used the keyboard to switch windows. His eyes reflected the dialog boxes and codes that kept popping up on the screen. Hunting. Chapter 799. Her typing speed was so fast it was dazzling. The clicking sound was very rhythmic, and it was difficult to eliminate its uniqueness when mixed with the clamor of the crowd. The messages were still coming in. This was a help to Bojio since it was useful to lock down the IP address. Bojio took a moment before sending a message. But her words almost caused her to be kicked out of the group. The fans watching by the side were worried for the youngster. Even Feng Yi's mouth twitched as he watched from the side. At this moment, you sent a message in the group, "Big Spade is so handsome. Are you sure you aren't looking for AT? The people inside are disgusted by Big Spade, how can you say such things?" Feng Yi felt that it wasn't a good idea to let little Spade do this. Bojio chuckled, turning to look at Qin Mo. She was still trying to tempt her pet. "Brother Mo, can't I speak the truth in this day and age? I'm the Skybreaker, I haven't mentioned my other strengths, for example, I'm good at games, I often get the first kill and I'm good at earning money. People like me aren't easy to find." Feng Yi smirked. "Little Spade, did you know that you were trying to convince the Almighty to marry you?" With that in mind, Feng Yi glanced at Qin Mo. "What exactly did you like about this guy? Narcissism? Cut the crap, continue working or I'll throw you out." Qin Mo didn't look at Feng Yi, instead placing his hand on the youngster's head, pressing it gently. Even though he was warning him, his thin lips were smiling. He didn't look like he was going to throw him out, it was obvious he was being sarcastic. The fans felt as though they had been stuffed with another round of dog food. Almighty Qin's boyfriend-like actions, were they really not intentional? Hoshino, who wasn't far away, saw the entire scene. His hands stilled. When he glanced up, his gaze landed on the youngster's straight back. "Z, you would rather shed a layer of skin and take the risk to fight in front of so many people. Was it because of Qin Mo?" Hoshino wasn't sure what their relationship was. But if he knew a person well, he would be able to tell from her actions. Moreover, it was Hoshino versus Z. For a hacker, especially a hacker like Z, hiding himself was more important than anything else. This was Z's most perfect work. But at this moment, Z exposed his back to the enemy. It was revealed to the most mysterious profiler in the case-solving team. "What does this mean?" "Z, there's no way you didn't know. For you. Was Qin Mo someone you would protect even if you had to go this far?" Hoshino glanced at the crowd again. Qin Mo leaned forward, intentionally or unintentionally blocking the youngster's line of sight as she typed. A phone login is different from a computer login. The IP address will be disguised. Qin Mo understood the basics. After all, he had caught Z before. "That's why I let them talk more." When Bojio lifted her lips, she gave off a mischievous aura. "You have to pay the price for refuting my handsomeness." With a snap, his slender fingers tapped on the enter key with a crisp sound. Other than the code on the screen, a dialog box popped up. It was the interface of the manager with a Performance tab. After clicking on the Resource Monitor button, the IP address of the sender of the data packet would be displayed. This meant that the IP address of the person who had spoken to Bojo alone would be locked down. When these things appeared, the fans were stunned once again. They couldn't understand it, but they found it cool. Even if they couldn't understand it, they could see the IP address bar flashing. Especially when there was a reply when the youngster typed a message. With a snap, she pressed the enter key. The IP address was locked. But at this moment, it wasn't useful to just lock down the address. Time was tight. There wasn't any extra time for Bojo to check the exact location. But right from the start, Bojo hadn't intended to use the IP address to confirm the exact location. Instead, it was hacking. Back then, it had been the admin who had checked the group. The IP address that Bojo had hacked was obviously the admin, so many accounts had been dropped. Seriously. Bojo arched a brow as she operated. Can't you use a little more advanced hacking? Feng Yi was starting to panic. Was this the time to complain about the other party's lack of methods? Who was the one who had praised him previously? Time, little spade, time. Wait a minute, code analysis. Bojo moved her fingers. It's coming. What was coming? This youngster had obviously dodged the loophole in the firewall and headed straight for the heart of the other party. When these things appeared on the laptop screen, they were strings of code that no one could understand. Only the pair of hands moved faster than before. When the youngster typed on the keyboard, the laptop would shake slightly. Is Big Spade hacking the other party's account? A fan asked in a low voice. The other fan shook her head. At this moment, Bojo laughed. A real hacker would never hack an account, that's too low class. I'm planting a fun virus, it's called hacking. With that, the youngster's fingers paused. With a swoosh, a bunch of images appeared on the screen, each one different. There were only 13 people who had actually arrived at the competition venue. This is. It wasn't just the fans, even Feng Yi was shocked. Phone selfie. How exactly did he do it? Everyone was looking at the youngster who was controlling the laptop, feeling as though the world had turned into a fantasy. From what they knew, who could control a phone from a distance? But they didn't know that a real hacker would be able to find the loophole as long as there was an internet connection, launching an all-out hunt. Only Qin Mo remained as noble and indifferent as ever when he saw this scene. His eyes were deep, and he had one hand in his pocket as he swept his gaze across the venue. He looked casual, but in fact, he was highly focused. In less than 3 seconds, he immediately locked onto one of them. It wasn't because of the person's appearance, but because of the way he had flung his phone. The phone didn't listen to him. That was a subconscious reaction that everyone would form. Qin Mo reached out, pressing the Bluetooth earpiece on his left ear. Upper left, 45 degrees, grab. As a sniper, this wasn't the first time he had been used in such a manner. Besides, these people weren't seated in the audience, they had mixed in with the unofficial fans. In the past, he hadn't been able to make a move because he was afraid of implicating the innocent. But now, he had locked onto anyone who shook his phone. It was really emotional. It seemed like a scene from a movie. At this moment, Feng Yi realized something. The reason Almighty Qin didn't leave. It wasn't just to accompany the youngster. Instead, his field of vision was directly aimed at the unofficial fans' seating area. Was that why they had chosen this spot from the start? Because it was a good field of vision. Almighty Qin knew something had happened. He could understand why. But Little Spade had chosen this spot out of all places. He must have known beforehand that something was going to happen, right? Why did he suddenly feel like his intelligence was low? Shouldn't he, as the manager, have known earlier? Feng Yi glanced up, glancing towards Qin Mo and Bojo. One of them was seated while the other was standing. One of them wasn't moving while the other was giving orders through his earpiece. They had the same strong aura but a different handsome face. With the uniform on, they looked like the commander of a Star Trek. When the two of them were together, it was an impactful scene. Only the people present could understand how it felt. No wonder some people were infatuated. They were so handsome. Not only was their coordination perfect, but they didn't waste any time in connecting. The fans who were fortunate enough to witness this scene, they were speechless. After all, they had come with the mindset of watching their idol play games. They hadn't expected to see something even cooler than the game. The images on the laptop screen disappeared one after another. The people who had flung their phones didn't know why they had been taken out of the venue. They weren't angry. They hadn't accomplished what they wanted, how could they be happy? They hadn't even released the news. They hadn't told everyone about how Spade Z had bullied their true fans. And most importantly, the manager had mentioned a piece of news. What exactly was it? They hadn't done anything yet, why were they taken away? Not far away. The youngster pressed the enter key. Only 2 words appeared on the huge screen. KO. All of them were hunted. The organizer watched as the people he had planted disappeared one by one. His first reaction was to call Wu Zhen. But the strange thing was that the first time he called, his phone could still get through, but no one picked up. The second time he called, his phone didn't listen to him. It turned on the camera function and took a picture of his face. At that moment, he really panicked. He kept flinging his phone, thinking that he had pressed the wrong button and the screen was locked. He wanted to switch it off and restart. The organizer was smart. If he switched off his phone, he could indeed cut off the network control. But Almighty Qin's speed of finding people didn't give him a chance to escape. Just after he rebooted his phone, a voice suddenly rang out. The venue's security appeared in front of him. "Sir, please come with us." The organizer was smart. "I bought a ticket to watch the competition. Now that it's about to start, I have to go with you just because you asked me to." "Why?" The security looked at each other and knew that he was a prick. They tried to reason with him. "Because you broke the rules, we need to verify it." Chapter 800. Hearing this, the field control narrowed his eyes. "Please cooperate with us. I'm not leaving." Not only did that person not cooperate, but he also started to make a fuss, his voice getting louder and louder. The field control couldn't do anything, so they had to do it directly. That person really couldn't accept that the trap he had set up for so long was broken just like that. He tried his best to stir up trouble, trying to get people's attention. The field control was after all the field control. It was obvious that he was here to cause trouble. If they didn't pull him away, they wouldn't let him cause trouble. However, the field control was still very polite, so they politely asked the person to talk first. Unfortunately, the field control was polite, but that person found a loophole. Just as they were about to pull him to the exit, that person looked at the youngster and Qin Mo who were walking towards him, as well as the fans behind them. His eyes were vicious. After all, he had been doing things for so many years and had never been caught. This time, even if he was caught, he wanted to let people know what kind of person Spade Z was. Anyway, that kind of thing, as long as one fan knew, all the fans would know. What's more, there was the field control here. That person exerted strength in his fingers and changed the direction of the camera. He yelled at the fans behind the youngster, "The Spade Z you like is just a woman dressed as a man. She has never been a hunk." It was just one sentence. Even in a noisy environment, everyone near him could hear it clearly. Whether it was the field control or the fans. And Feng Yi, who was at the scene. There was no way to describe their expressions. Because at that moment, there was no expression. Everyone seemed to be frozen in place. There was a moment of stagnation in time. It was as if the surrounding sound and air had been sucked away. Such a scene shouldn't have appeared in such a lively place. Because there was still a competition. 15 minutes later, the finals would begin. Swoosh. 8 screens hung in the middle of the room. Using 3D sound effects, they began to slowly descend from the ceiling. Every link was made with top-notch equipment. In a 3-dimensional form, this esports competition that was attracting the attention of the country was being broadcasted live. Adjustments were being made to each of the cameras. On the 8 big screens, there were stereo sound effects. If you went to an esports competition, you would know what kind of standard it was. Every screen had a different introduction for each team. They were the team's promotional videos. The special sound effect of entering the game was played in the promotional video. It was like a fire that could ignite the entire youth. That youth belonged to them. That kind of scene seemed to only be seen in comics. When the promotional video of Supreme Alliance came out, the fans who came to watch were all excited. They clenched the hands of the people sitting next to them in excitement, their hearts trembling uncontrollably. It was about to begin. He had been waiting for this scene for 3 years. It was about to begin. There was a group of people. From countless honors to falling to rock bottom. Then, he climbed up from the bottom of the valley bit by bit. That group of people had been through too much. Now, at this moment, they could finally stand up again. The defending champion in the hearts of the fans, Supreme Alliance. However, the fans didn't know. It was at the exit of the northern corner of the esports arena. The air froze for a second. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.